All right, we are live at the Vine for our weekly Torah portions, and with SUKKOT coming around the corner for us, Jonathan. What? How many days is that now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah, 4 or 5 days.
4 or 5 days down. Yeah, some for some. Their SUKKOT started, I think, yesterday. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody who's out there. If your SUKKOT's already started, may it be a blessing to you, your family, and everyone you gather with. And Jonathan, we go ahead and open us up in prayer.
Yeah, we'll do. All right, Jula, thanks so much for the day you've given us. Thank you for good weather here in South Carolina. Pray for everyone where they're at, that they're able to find some peace, some shalom today on their Sabbath, that things are going easy and smooth in their lives, that they're able to open the Word today, to dig in, to spend some of this time that you've appointed for us to spend with you in the Word and prayer. And let's pray for those in our community that have big needs, that you will meet their needs, that you'll calm their hearts and their spirits, that you'll reassure them that you will always go before them, that you already have a plan for them, and that you'll protect them and keep them in your hand as you promised. So I thank you for who you are, who you continue to be, meeting our needs and even some of our wants. Great things in your Son, Yeshua's holy name. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. So today we're going to be reading the Torah portion. Today is going to be out of Leviticus 22, reading through 23. This is going to be the festival portion. This is a SUKKOT portion. So it won't be a very long read today. We'll be in ZECHARIAH later in chapter 14, reading verses 1 through 21. Then we'll be in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, 1 through 20 as well. So, Jonathan, I'll take 22, and if you want to read 23.
I can make that work.
And yes, basically two full chapters. You take a chapter, I got a chapter. You got this. All right, so in chapter 22 of Leviticus, it says, "And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, that they separate themselves from the set-apart offerings of the children of Israel, and that they do not profane my set-apart name and what they set apart to me. I am Jehovah. Say to them, any man of all your offspring throughout your generations who draws near the set-apart offerings, which the children of Israel set apart to Jehovah, while he has uncleanness upon him, that being shall be cut off from before me. I am Jehovah. Any man of the offspring of Aaron who is a leper or has a discharge does not eat the set apart offerings until he is clean. And whoever touches what is rendered unclean by a being or a man who has had emission or semen, or a man who touches any swarming creature by which he would be made unclean, or by any being by whom he would become unclean, even any of his uncleanness. The being who has touched it shall be unclean until evening, and does not eat the set apart offerings, but shall bathe his body in water. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterward eat the set apart offerings, because it is his food. He does not eat that which dies or is torn by beasts, becoming unclean by it. I am Jehovah. And they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby, when they profane it. I, Jehovah, set them apart. And no stranger eats the set apart offering. A sojourner with a priest or a hired servant does not eat the set apart offering. But when the priest buys a being with his silver, he does eat of it, and one who is born in his house does eat of his food. And when a priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set apart offerings. But when a priest's daughter is a widow or put away, and has no child, and has returned to her father's house as in her youth, she does eat her father's food, but no stranger eats of it. And when a man eats the set apart offering by mistake, then he shall give a set apart offering to the priest, and add 1/5 to it. And let the priest not profane the set apart offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Jehovah, or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set apart offerings. For I am Jehovah who sets them apart. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak unto Aaron and his sons, and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, Any man of the house of Israel, or of strangers of Israel, who brings his offerings for any of his vows, or for any of his voluntary offerings, which they bring to Jehovah as an ascending offering for your acceptance is a male, a perfect one from the cattle, from the sheep, or from the goats. Whatever has defect, you do not bring, for it is not acceptable for you. And when a man brings a slaughtering of peace offerings to Jehovah to complete a vow or a voluntary offering from the cattle or the sheep, it is to be perfect to be accepted. Let there be no defect in it. Those blind or broken or cut or having an ulcer or eczema or scabs, you do not bring to Jehovah, nor make an offering by fire of them on the slaughter place to Jehovah. As for a bull or a lamb that has any limb deformed or dwarfed, you do prepare as a As for a bull or a lamb that has any limb deformed or dwarfed, you do prepare as a voluntary offering, but for a vow it is not accepted. Do not bring to Jehovah what is bruised or crushed or torn or cut, nor do it in your land. And from a son of a stranger's hand, you do not bring any of these as the bread of your Elohim, for their corruption is in them, and defects are in them. They are not acceptable for you. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, when a bull or sheep or goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day and thereafter it is acceptable as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. But do not slay a cow or a sheep and its young on the same day. And when you slaughter a slaughtering of thanksgiving to Jehovah, slaughter it for your acceptance. It is eaten that same day. Leave none of it till morning. I am Jehovah. And you shall guard my commands and to do them. I am Jehovah. And do not profane my set apart name, and I shall be set apart among the children of Israel. I am Jehovah who sets you apart, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Jehovah.
So in verse 23, where it says, you may present a bull or a lamb that has a part too long or too short for a free will offering, but a vow offering, it cannot be accepted. I think that's very interesting because I, at least in my mind, have had this impression that you can only bring the best and the super duper and the awesome and the perfect animals in the temple, period. But here it's saying you can, but it's going to fall in the free will category. It's going to be your bonus, your like how we call it in today's church mentality is I was going to say model and mentality. In today's church's model or mentality is that we have our tithes, but then we have our offerings, our above and beyond. So it's saying if you do everything that's prescribed correctly, and you did bring that perfect lamb or bull, and you did do everything as prescribed for your sin offering or for your vow or all the different reasons and things that you'd want to do in that category, it's almost like if you're doing something just as a free will or additional, that it's then accepted because it's not like at your house you wouldn't eat that. If you had a bull that was a little gimpy, you wouldn't be like, oh, all that means is tainted, throw in the trash. So it's in if you're going to use it just for supply, just for hey, this is just food. This isn't anything holy. We're not trying to call this set apart. We're not putting any distinction on it. The priest isn't putting his hand over it and praying for it and all this other special stuff. And I thought that was very interesting because I honestly I've only seen and really read the alternative of everything that's in the temple, everything that's ever being seen, used, or even thought about had to be perfect, which I didn't understand how it was even possible. Like, can you imagine having a flock and everyone's perfect? Otherwise, what do you do? You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh man, oh well.
Right. One of the things too, Jonathan, going just back a little bit from that. So you see that the word profane is used a lot in here. And so with him, he's like you just said, and I don't know, I guess I never really thought about, or maybe would have glossed over it, that you could bring something with a defect. You could bring, for a vow offering, free will. I'm sorry, that's right. And, or it says, or in this one, in my translation, it says a voluntary offering.
Yeah.
I volunteer this gimpy calf for my, anyway. But you see that the word profane is used throughout this, and then he has specific rules for the Levitical priesthood, and especially when it comes to, and this is about just eating food. He's saying, hey, this food is set apart from you. This is This isn't for the strangers. This isn't for anybody else. It's for you, the Levite priests. And if anybody had any thoughts or whatever that the priests were not married, yes, they are. They have a family. It's very clear here in verse 13. It says, when a priest's daughter is a widow or put away, has no child, and has returned to her father's house as in her youth, she does eat her father's food, but no stranger eats of it. And so we see this word profane, and it just lets you know that the order in which Yahweh does everything, he has a set order. And so what that tells me is that, and I know that we live in a time where we're walking through what we call muddy waters. And God, and I believe that there is a measure of grace given to all of us, because we've all profaned God's name. And I'm not saying that, I'm not even saying cuss words. I'm saying we've profaned God's name. We profane God's ways. When we kept Sunday Sabbath, for me, the majority of my Christian walk, I was profaning that day by declaring another day to be the holy day when it really wasn't. So what we see is God's got a set order from creation, from the very beginning all the way to the very end. There's a set order in which we are to worship him. We are to love one another. We're to live in community. All these things, even down to the priestly duties and what they're supposed to do. They're given specific directions. Hey, this is yours. This is your portion. This is what you're to do with it. By the way, if you don't do this, back then in our eyes, it seems a lot more severe. You're cut off. Or in here, it actually uses the word, so I can find it real quick, uses the word, you will die or something like that. I just saw it too. I hate that. It says in verse 9, it says, and they shall guard my charge lest they bear sin for it and die thereby. And again, he uses the word profane. And so one of the things I think we try to be conscious of is when we're doing things, to do them, yes, to the best of our ability, but something we have multiple conversations with is when we do these things, we always want to go back to what we have and what it says, and not, I was thinking it's no big deal, or I was thinking, God doesn't really mind, and I feel, there's a lot of feel in there, and I use that term too, because when I'm using that term, it's because I'm telling you, I'm not pulling Bible out of this. I'm just telling you, this is how I feel about a certain situation, which is fair, to say, hey, about whatever that is. But I think it's important to realize that sometimes we look at what the Father set up in these days, and really it was set up before that, right? These aren't new things. These are already God's. His laws, his statutes, all this stuff was already in place well before any of this took place. But I think as believers, we have to always be conscious of, can I do better sometimes? Can I look into a matter instead of going along with the flow or going along with whatever it might be? Can I look into these matters myself? And the answer it would always be, yes, you can. That you could study these matters out, and then not even, of course, this doesn't apply to us. This isn't applicable to us, what the priest is doing. It's not like, Jonathan, here's your meal for you and your family, and that's it, bro. Don't share with anybody. Joe and Vicky can't come over. Nobody else can. This isn't applicable to us, but what is applicable to us is what our portion and what our responsibilities are, and how we walk our daily life out. And maybe sometimes going, maybe I shouldn't do this. To me, Sabbath is one of those where, coming into this, the first thing says, well, what do we do? Well, a lot of times the answer is, you do nothing. Right. Well, it's got to be more than just doing nothing, Yeah,
we heard as far as you're not supposed to make your bed, don't take a shower, you can't put the trash in the trash can, you have to leave it on the counter. And I was like, there's got to be some way that this is. There's no way the Bible is telling us to do zero things, because they're literally going to the temple, they're doing stuff. It shows them being active. Yeshua walks on the scene, he's healing people, he's walking through the fields, he's teaching his disciples. They're still doing stuff. So it's, I think our definition of rest is, and we live in such busy world that there's so much activity going on. We want to say, shut everything down, be lazy, lay on the couch, and eat Doritos. And I think God was like, that's not what I meant. When I wrote the word rest, that's a lot unfortunately. It was never intended for a lazy day. It was never intended for it to be something where we just, we blow our schedules off and we just kind of sleep in, do whatever we want. It's like, yeah, take your time. You don't have to rush every day. You don't have to get up and go to work. You don't have to do your occupation. So yeah, I got you there. But don't forget, I still want to spend time with you. I still ask you to make a holy convocation, get together with the other body of believers.
Mm-hmm.
So you still got to eat, and I'm calling it a feast day. So that means you got to do something better than just crackers and, or whatever, or whatever turkey meat, I guess. But
well, there is beef bologna, so we'll let that one slide. Yeah, we'll let that one slide.
As long as you fry it on both sides.
That's right.
A little mustard. But yeah, so I think that's one of the things, like you were saying, where our definition of what that Sabbath is, what the priest's job is, it's been so confined into such a small box that we're not seeing the fullness of it. And I think God literally, it kind of sounds weird, thank God, but I thank God literally for bringing Yeshua to the earth and letting us see that example walked out. Yeshua wasn't just like, all right, disciples, leave me alone. It's the Sabbath. I'm going to sleep in. I'm not going to change my clothes. I'm not going to shower. I'm just going to hang out today. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. Like, no, he was active and out and enjoying life with them and doing stuff. And same thing with the priesthood. He's kind of showing us how that might look. And he's definitely telling us in Hebrews what it really looks like, at like the more heavenly version of it. And it's more, this whole thing's about being clean. Even in verse 4, it says, until clean. Well, Yeshua is just always clean. So there's not an until. There's just since he's clean, now you can delete this whole portion for Yeshua. His example doesn't need any of this stuff. All the animals or whatever he sacrificed is perfect. He's perfect. So then a lot of this gets slimmed down into like, this is just, it is simple, right? And we kind of look at some of these things like, man, it's so difficult. We can't do this. And then you need the temple and you got to have this brazen all that. And Jesus is like, for me, it's kind of normal. This is actually my job. And then that's okay.
Absolutely. And you think about that too, because during the time, the temple practice of Yeshua, it wasn't perfect. They didn't even have the ark there. They weren't doing the sacrifices properly. There was a lot going on that we won't go into today in this portion because it would take up the rest of the time. And but you see that the example that Yeshua walked out again, like you said, for us. And where the other thing, when we flip that around, the Sabbath and keeping God's holy days should not be a burden either. Mm-hmm. This should be a delight. It should be, for all of us, for me, as I grew in this walk, as I grew into understanding the Sabbath more, and, we all pick a lane where we'll decide if we're going to do certain things on the Sabbath or not do certain things. Some people won't do anything extra. They won't go to a wedding. They won't do anything, anything outside of what they feel like they need to be doing, and that's fine. Because I've always said, hey, you need to walk out your salvation with fear and trembling, and for all of us to walk it out consistently, and to be an example for other people. But definitely, and especially with this portion being about SUKKOT that we're getting ready to read in 23, we see that SUKKOT is supposed to be a joyful time. Now, we just came out of the atonement last night. And that is more of I think it talks about humbling yourself. It talks about, I think it's more of it's not a joyful time, so to speak, where you're celebrating, hey, it's Atonement Day, but a time where you get real with yourself and a time you get real with Abba. And, then it's like when all that's said and done, we go through the Feast of Trumpets, the 10 days of awe, we go into atonement, and we see what atonement was in the Bible, how they did atonement. But then later we see that we now have a new we have a high priest. I say a new high priest, but we have a high priest in Yeshua under the order of Melchizedek that changes a lot of what we're reading here about that particular time of celebration. Mm-hmm. And so now we go into the Feast of SUKKOT, and look forward to it. This year is going to be have its challenges for us for sure, but I still look forward to the people. Yeah. And being with other like-minded believers and, eating. Eating is one of the biggest things we do. For some people, it gives them an excuse, I think, to maybe try to tie on the strong drink, maybe a little bit more than they should. Lord said to have a good time. Not that good, but, but again, it's about going into these feast days and doing our best to honor Abba. And I think that's something for me personally in my walk for the last little bit, where I'm thinking, okay, am I doing anything to profane this day? Am I doing anything to take away from it? Am I doing anything to add to it? Am I doing anything to put pressure on somebody else? All these different things come to mind for me personally. So, reading through this and seeing the word profane a lot, that tells me this is very important to Jehovah and how we conduct ourselves.
Sylvia?
I was contemplating this week that picture of SUKKOT and how really all of the feasts point to a second coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're at Passover. It's just those who covenant who are to partake of that, because you don't want someone who's not drinking damnation to themselves. But when we get to SUKKOT and it being representative of that millennial reign, we invite friends to that, to come enjoy SUKKOT with us, see what it's all about. It's kind of a picture of when you have those that have been resurrected, the immortals, and then the ones still in mortal bodies that are going down to learn. Mm-hmm. I just kind of see that picture of the millennial reign in that. And then, we're resting from the work from this world, really. Egypt, Babylon, the enslavement is where all of that's set aside for this one day a week, or, during the millennial reign, where we're just focusing on Yahweh, focusing on His word, loving one another and enjoying the relationship with one another unencumbered, and then loving those around us so that they can see just what wonders Yahweh has to offer us when we're in a relationship with Him.
Amen. Yeah.
That's a good picture for sure of kind of being that city on the hill, being the group of people that are tabernacling with the Father, and the world around you still is gonna experience it, not on the inside but on the outside. And it's kind of almost like that party. You're like, oh, I didn't get the invitation. It looks like it's a good time in there. Or walking around an amusement park, you can hear everybody having fun, you can see everybody having fun, but you're not currently taking part. Which is just going to naturally want to draw you in. It's going to want to make you get excited about that. And, what do I need to do to get to that position? I think sometimes if we look at our faith that way, that we do have something awesome and we do serve an awesome God, that is going to be attractive to the world around us. And they're going to see, well, while I may not agree currently or the way the religion has been shown to me, I don't like, but what I'm seeing, I do like. And I think that's why we are told, goodness, today I'm struggling, why we're told to walk this out in a manner that is upright and it's correct. Because if we're honoring the Father, we will be salt and light. We will be the season. We will be the light. We will show the example. And if we're not drawing men unto ourselves and then ultimately unto the Father, then we're not really showing that to the world around us, but then even more so to the body of believers that we're surrounded with. We're all going to fall and stumble. We're all going to have weak days. And I think it's important that we show, hey, Joe's been going through it. Hey, Jonathan's been going through it. Sylvia's been going through it. But yet they keep on coming back as if Rocky Balboa moment. Every time you get knocked down, you're like, I still got more. Yeah, I still got more. And, that would be very attractive especially to the average person who's, looking at their life and saying, yeah, things just it's not cutting it. I can't figure out how to get out of this slump or out of this hole or out of this whatever. And they're like, but I see you in the similar position. Yeah, you have joy. It's like, and you're like, what is it? And you're like, the fruit of the Spirit again. But it's something exciting about that, of being able to be used by the Father in that way and to see someone else's life change just by you doing what you're supposed to do. It's like there's that order of effects. It's your personal walk with the Father and how it's actually impacting those around you. We don't even notice that how big of a deal that is and how big of a deal that could be, because you're just doing what you're supposed to do. You and God are focused, your relationship, it's just naturally going to impact those around you. You don't even have to spend the extra time of writing out tracts and trying to make sure you go to special places and do special things. No. Your testimony, your example will permeate the room around you. You'll walk in and carry yourself totally different. You'll respond and act totally different. And the world notices that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sylvia, when you were talking about the SUKKOT looking like the millennial reign, or or when we're all together, at the very end. I think that is an example for others to see too, that when you can bring your family to SUKKOT, you can bring maybe unbelievers or people who aren't quite there yet in their understanding, to see like, hey, see how this is where we're all together, we're all fellowshipping, we're all having a good time. The Father's presence is here with us and wherever we're camping or whatever we're doing. I think that's a really great example of showing people, one, how, kind of a little bit, not the greatest image of what it will be like at that time, but kind of giving hints of what that's going to be, and making, maybe them going, man, this isn't so bad. So, where people come back and say, why you do those Jewish holidays, or why you do these different things, and they act like, because they've never experienced them, to them it's a burden. I tell people, it's like, man, I delight in these days. I delight in these appointed times. I delight in getting together and spending a week camping and hanging out and talking Bible and all the things that we do when we go SUKKOTing, and just, I think that when people actually get to experience that, and we've had in the past, when we've been out at Santee, we've had up to over 114 people between staying there and also the amount of people who visited just to come and see what was going on. And you could tell none of us looked burdened. None of them felt burdened when they came. They actually were like, man, this is really, some of them would actually say, you know what, next year I'm going to really try to be out here with you guys. I'm really going to try to, it kind of helps spur them along, and maybe being a part of what's going on with the group. So anyway, Miss Sylvia?
My, about 2012, we had a friend that moved away and he came back. And he was following Torah when he came back. Honestly, I may not have noticed if Baba had changed anybody else, but this particular person really made it stand out. And just a little bit of things they shared, was in the church. And my first knee-jerk reaction was saying this easy. Oh, he's gone back into the law. He doesn't know, just parroting back that same thing, then indoctrinated with. But when he would say things, he would start using terms I was not familiar with. And so I wouldn't say anything, but I would go back and I'd look it up. It's like, wow, it is here in scripture. So this kind of went on for almost 2 years.
Hey, hold on, Sylvia, 1 second. You mean you went and researched this yourself?
You know what it was for, so I could show Chris he was wrong.
Right.
I
Right.
thought I knew what and before he's saying it, it's like, crap, who's wrong? But it was also, really, it was at a time though, I had walked away because I had gotten so burned by the church, when I was younger. I walked away for 10 years. I just wanted nothing to do with it. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where else to look, and still believing, the law's done away with, so who needs to understand that anyway? I had went back on 3 years before, he went through his transformation. And I thought, I'm going to get it right this time. I'm going to be at the church up there, and Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Friday night Bible study. I was serving on the women's team. I was teaching children in Awanas, and I was going to do everything. By the end of 2.5, 3 years, I was just in tears. And I'm like, why does it feel like drudgery to serve you? What is going on here? Because something is so desperately wrong. That's when he came back. But I did, when I was praying though, I remember that scripture, he who lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, because he gives liberally. So that's what I prayed. I know I need wisdom. And so when he came back and started sharing, I wasn't going to just step into it. I've already been duped so many times that, I'm going to guard it, but I want to go back and look to it. I don't want to just dismiss it. So for almost 2 years, I just kept going back and looking. And in the meantime of doing that, I started learning the Hebrew language. I started studying the Paleo Hebrew after I got the Aleph down. And so I started talking about feasts. I was like, are we really supposed to be doing the feasts still? And what are they? And so by summer, so my girlfriend and I, we would go to all the Christian concerts. That was like our thing. And the one group that had like 3 of the bands that we liked the best were all going to be there at one time. We waited for this moment. I got tickets 3 months before. And so I'm praying about the feast. Well, and I'm doing this now. At this point, I'm doing it by myself because they're like 5 hours away. What do I do? What's the next feast? So I look it up, and it's Yom Kippur, of all things, October 3rd, 2014. And so I was like, well, what are we supposed to do? And of course, I'm looking online. So what's on the kabbalah and stuff. And so I'm reading that. Well, we're supposed to fast and do this. And now I had been trying to quit smoking. You have no idea how hard. I mean, I tried Wellbutrin, Chantrix. I tried hypnosis. I tried everything, and I could not quit smoking. It was such a bad addiction. But when I saw we're supposed to fast, and I thought this kind of fear kind of came over me. It's like, ooh, if we're supposed to fast and not eat, I probably shouldn't be smoking. Well, surely I can go 24 hours. So I laid the cigarettes down. I will have you know, I never picked a cigarette up after that day.
Wow.
It's like he took withdrawal symptoms. He took any adverse effect. He actually took the desire. And I think it was just that blessing he poured out as that first step out in obedience, even though I didn't know anything, that my heart wanted to do the right thing. He honored that. And so my friends were doing SUKKOT down in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And so I went down there, and it was my first SUKKOT. To see how the people were interacting with one another, to see that you could ask questions about scripture, and they would sit and talk. One of the things in the churches, nobody really wanted to talk about scripture after the service or potluck. It's all about gardening, or when the women got together, it was here, buy my Avon, or buy my Pampered Chef, or it was to go spend money here. It wasn't really a true fellowship, and even a Bible study was let's study this person's book about the Bible, but let's not study the Bible. So there was just something missing, and I come out of the services, and the word would just move me, but nobody wanted to talk about it. But when I got there, not only did people want to talk about it, they would talk about it for hours. And I was like, and at that moment, halfway through that SUKKOT, it was like, Abba, I'm in. I'm giving it all over to you, because this is the direction I'm supposed to be taking. I know. And just for the next year, especially through the winter and on the weekends, I was still working at the time, just digging into the word 12, 14 hours a day, just in the word, listening to teachings, reading scripture, reading the Old Testament. Things started making some sense. He's just built on it. And, one of the first evenings I remember, I was reading through John 4, where he's talking to the woman at the well. And I kind of stopped, and I started crying. And I thought, because I remember things I heard from the church, other people told me, and all the different religions I dabbled in, and scripture, and this chaos kind of overwhelmed me. I just started crying. It's like, oh, how do I know? There's so many voices vying for my attention. How do I know which one is yours? Well, finally, the tears subsided. I went back to reading, and I kid you not, the very next line I was reading was, "It is I who am speaking to you." It was like, okay, that's that. It's been an incredible journey, since then. And I think a lot of times we need to remember when we're sharing with family or friends, I think there's some people that just see it, receive it right off the bat and go and continue. But I think people who are truly holding on to the faith they have, they believe, they're not just going to switch that easily. Give them, plant the seeds, because it's Abba that brings that increase. So we may not see that, may never see the fruit of those seeds we plant, but they're there. And seeds can remain viable in the ground until they get the water on them for many years.
Yep.
And it may be that people they need that time to keep searching this out. And they're going to watch your walk. They really are. If they're serious and they're listening to what you say, they're going to watch you. Oh yeah, really? Has all of this really changed? Because when we party coming, this is a guy we'd hide the beer from because he'd drink it all. And we had parties one time, we bought 30 cases.
Wow.
And people would come around the fire pit. So, I mean, that was a big change. So to watch this individual, it was, I did for 2 years. We just watched.
Amen. Yeah. Your walk is always going to be your most powerful testimony. You can talk all day long, but if your walk doesn't match your talk, then he would see. I knew he was fake.
Or it's not worth me taking a second look at it.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so one of the words, Joe, that you brought up, and by the way, Sylvia, thank you for all that. That was
Thank
awesome.
you so much.
And a really, 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 really awesome testimony. The cigarette thing was really cool. I never smoked before, but I can imagine, and that sounded like some super awesome God stuff.
Yeah, man.
One of the words Joe brought up was, that things are difficult, and then the other one was profane. And I was reading through there in verse 6, 7 area. So I'll read some of it real quick. It says, "The person who touches such a thing shall be unclean until evening, and shall not eat of the holy things unless he has bathed his body in water. When the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterward he may eat of the holy things." So one of the things that I was kind of looking at is obviously talking about profaning, right? We can't do stuff when we're not supposed to do stuff. So it's telling you that you're not clean at all until the sun goes down. So don't think about it. Don't check in. Don't go double ask. No, please. Like, no, this is how that requirement works. And so that would be our way to make sure we're not profaning. But then also the difficulty part of it, I know as we've kind of come over to the biblical priest calendar, things have seemed to get real easy. I'm not checking the clock and trying to see, well, what time is it? When can I go here? When can I go there? Trying to line up all my dates, year by year. I have to go and redo the entire, like, for instance, my children are in school. And every year we have to do the letter to the principal saying which days your kids are going to be off for religious days and get the exemptions. I have no idea the next year. I got to go on the internet and try to figure it out and then line it up and all this kind of stuff. Where now it's very simple. Like, I can do it on my own. The new calendars weren't out on the internet yet. So I just went and looked at. I started thinking about it. Okay, well, if the solstice is this day, da 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 da, and I just kind of mapped it out. Like, in my own head, I was like, that's really cool. That's easy compared to the opposite, which was very difficult in my mind. And so the same thing here. It's telling us when the sun goes down is when you'll be clean. And anybody correct me?
All right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We had to pause that for a minute online as well, guys. The Ryan just got here and the dog was going crazy on us. So.
I feel free, anybody on the YouTube or here on Zoom, correct me if I'm mistaken or if I have some details off. But I think the way the temple practice worked is, they open in the morning, they would do sacrifices and cleanings and inspections and all that kind of stuff, their daily duties all throughout the day. And at evening, they would close down the temple, and it's all they had to do, or tabernacle, of course. All they would have to do is keep that fire going, that perpetual fire. That was really the only requirement to run through the evening. So that's why, to me, the way I'm reading it is you were unclean until evening, because at evening it would close, and then there was nothing that you could have done until morning anyway. So it didn't need to say you're unclean until evening, and then you can start again in the morning. It would have been applied and assumed that at evening you're not going to go to the temple at midnight, and try to go take care of some business. You're going to wait till the next morning when they open back up. And reading it that way has adjusted my mentality a little bit about how some of these stories work and what the priests are doing and how their schedule actually plays out. But that's just where I'm at now and trying to learn that. So like I said, if anybody's got anything they'd like to go in on that, or they've got some more wisdom that they've learned over time, that would be awesome for everybody's edification. we all agree then? Temple closed in the evening. In the story.
In the story.
That's definitely not something that I'm that familiar with, but I thought they had evening sacrifices. So I guess at the end of that, it would close.
Mhm.
That's the only thing I can think of right now.
I mean, I don't
I
think
thought there was evening sacrifices, or like 9 o'clock sacrifices, or incense burning, or something.
100%. I know they took shifts
Yeah.
throughout the night. That's part of that. In the New Testament, where it talks about Jesus told Peter, "So before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me." Right?
This is at
And
nighttime.
so he wasn't talking about a physical bird. He was more or less, it was a idiom of the priesthood. I guess they would do some type of cadence or some type of, they would do something within the temple time at that night and within those hours, where it would be a sounding or, I mean, the best example I have is like, if you ever watched a movie with a castle, and you always had someone around the clock, right? Let's say 3 o'clock and all is well. I'm not saying that's what they were doing at the temple, saying, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, all is well. But they would make some type of announcement. They would do something that could be heard throughout the camp, I would imagine. So, and that's what they heard. It wasn't literally a bird on the temple grounds. That would be something considered unclean anyway. So, yes, I don't think it ever fully shut down. But as far as like the actual full-blown sacrifice, I think and then we have to figure out what our definition of evening is and when that would actually end. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, the sun's going down, so now we're ending the evening sacrifices, and then go transition into the next part of that. So,
Yeah, for me personally, I think it helps because you'll read a lot about that, about you're unclean till evening, all throughout Leviticus and Old Testament especially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not because they're saying now that this day is over, now you've been made clean, but it's saying more you're unclean during the whole time period of opening hours, during business hours essentially. So like if you were to think, pick a store that closes at 8 o'clock, not like Walmart, maybe like Home Depot, right? Let's just say it closes at 8 o'clock. Well, you can't go here at all until for today. We'll open back up tomorrow at 7 in the morning, and you can come back if you want to and try this over. But it's not like they would have been going there all hours of the night trying to do stuff. And they also wouldn't have tried to sneak in and be like, well, technically the sun set, but then like I made it right before you guys finished the last sacrifice. So maybe he's like, no, you're good for today. Take your day off, essentially. We'll come back tomorrow, wash yourself, get yourself back clean. So whenever we open back up, we can start over. But something to look into. That's where I'm studying.
well, something you said in that too was, I think what we don't realize is when we do things Abba's ways, they're actually easy.
Right.
The hard part now is your whole day is disrupted because you didn't do what he asked you to do. Now you've got to go bathe yourself. Now you got to clean your clothes. You got to do all these things for that day. So your day's shot until that evening. Says, and then it says in here, and then by that evening, then you're okay. And then this particular portion was talking about eating the food that was set apart for the priest.
Yeah, because it says, and afterward he made
Right.
it. So it's telling you,
Right.
Until evening, after that,
Right.
then you can eat. So whatever that time period is, again, they give us something set. When that's done, then you can get back in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're able to eat now. God's not gonna let you go hungry, the rest of the night until the next day. And anyway, but you see that when we don't do it, actually the tougher part for them is when they didn't do it God's way. There was more. What's where I'm looking for? Not penalty. There was more.
Stipulations,
yeah.
requirements.
Yeah, there was more consequences, to what you had to do, like the things that were now required of you. If you just would have done what you're supposed to do, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? You don't do it, now you have to go through all these different things.
To go with the evening not necessarily being the delineation of like a day has ended, to me, like the whole unclean thing And granted, it's God's ways, but the whole unclean thing, you're unclean until you get made clean. It seems logical to think. I don't know that the evening would necessarily denote, oh, you're not clean for some whatever reason. And there are certain ones where you'd be unclean for like a whole week, right?
Right. Like
So-
leprosy and different stuff like that. You had to come back
Yeah.
and check the next Sabbath.
Right.
Or the week later, just check your boils or your scabs or whatever.
Because if I wanted to argue for evening to evening days, this would be a good one. If I was going to come from that perspective, I think this would be a good one.
Well, and that's kind of why I brought it up, because I think that if we're gonna look at using evening as a denotation of time, which we know that's what that means. It means the sun's going down and the night's getting ready to start.
It's a shift. It's a change.
So we definitely know what that is. It's not a surprise. We're not going to try to they live near normal business hour type of schedule. It's not like Alaska or South America. When we're considering them saying you're unclean until evening, the way I've and again, there's multiple references I've gone back to before. It's saying, to me, it's talking about the business hours of the temple, because we're going to see the same thing in Revelation when it talks about the New Jerusalem and the 12 gates and how they're going to have to close and open and all this different stuff. We start to really see what this calendar is and how God's working it. You're going to come in from one side, leave out the other side. It's going to be this really set up thing. It's not saying based on the way the temple works, this is how calendar works. It's saying this is how the temple works. So you can't eat, because it says you can't eat the holy things. Where are the holy things? In the tabernacle. Don't go back in there because you're unclean. So once the evenings hit, after that, because now when the next day when we're up here cooking and we're starting fires, we've got the bread and the oil and the salt. After that, tomorrow when we're doing stuff again, the day's over. Food's over, dinner's over, sacrifices over, there's no more blood. Everybody didn't take their baths, their mikvahs, they've changed their cloaks and their garments.
Right.
After that, now we can kind of get back in the game. So you're not, it's more of saying how does the temple practice work and how does that schedule work versus how does the calendar work. I think a lot of people will read this and say, oh, they're unclean till evenings, new day. Well, where do we get that at? We have to really read a lot into that to apply calendar or schedule versus just, hey, because this isn't talking about the average person. This is just the priest who can go into the holy spots anyway. The regular person's not going into the table of showbread and all this other stuff. They're outside the camp. They come in and offer, but then they don't stay there. It's telling them, if you want to get back to this holy stuff, the cheeks and the left shoulder and the this and that, if you want all that good stuff,
All the cheeks.
tomorrow. But during the night, that's what that verse you were talking about, the idioms, like the thief in the night, and the heaping hot coal on you, whatever. It's like, yeah, if you're not prepared, if you're not up watching like you're supposed to be, if you're not keeping that fire burning, that was that one priest's job over the night, keep this fire burning. And he said, if not, they'll go get the little hot coal out and put it on you and burn you up. And it'll be a surprise to you. He said, don't let it be a surprise because there's nobody there. The temple's closed. It's just one or two people in there keeping things, fire burning, keeping watch out, making sure no one's dying or anything crazy. So that was just kind of how I've been reading into that.
It's kind of like back in the day. I don't really hear a whole lot anymore, but when we were kids growing up, if you misbehaved or didn't do what you're supposed to do, there's a good chance it's all right. Well, you just go to bed without dinner tonight. And guess when you're eating the next day? They
would have had that standard. They have the highest standard. They should know better.
Yeah.
They're teaching it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You made yourself unclean.
Yeah. Mr. David, thank you for joining us on Zoom, brother. We're getting ready, just so you have a reference, we're for everybody who may be watching right now, we're getting ready to go into chapter 23 of Leviticus and do some more reading into this the festival of SUKKOT.
I will say that I don't think most of the unclean stuff was necessarily on purpose. It seems like a lot of things could make you unclean, like sort of accidentally, so to speak, or you just have to do it. Right. An animal died, and you just have to deal with it.
Right.
So I don't see it as maybe a punishment, like, well, you can't do this now. It's still a protection, but
Absolutely.
not just for that person, but maybe for anybody who would be dealing with it. It's like, no, like under any circumstances, unclean people do not come in here.
Yeah, that's something we learned early, or at least I did. I learned early on in my walk with this was because something's labeled unclean doesn't make it a sin.
Right.
A pig is an unclean animal, but it has a purpose that God created for, right? So, thus said, pig dies. Somebody's got to take care of it. So,
especially depending on where it dies. Maybe it dies far enough out. He's like, okay, no,
let the birds get it.
Yeah.
He dead? Yeah, he did. But let's say you had, or not even a pig. Let's say a family member passed away. Someone's got to prepare the body. Someone's got to touch the dead. You know what I mean? Someone's got to do these things. And so therefore he's saying, hey, by the way, it's not a sin, but because you touch the dead carcass, make sure you follow these regimens of cleaning yourself, cleaning your clothes. Back then, if everyone lived in such close proximity to each other, that if you did something that you brought a disease, or you brought whatever, infection into the camp, man, it could spread like wildfire. And next thing you know, you got thousands of people dying. So a lot of it's just, God saying, hey, you're unclean doesn't mean you're sin, but just do these things so that now you can be clean and come back into the fold or come back into fellowship. So.
Especially when you have the command, be fruitful and multiply. And then here it says, when you have relations, you are now unclean.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, hold on. You told me to do this.
Yeah.
Now I'm unclean? What's going on here? How does the following command make me unclean? But it's like you said, it's just for the purpose and intent of what you're actually engaging with.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what it is, man. One of those things where God's ways are higher than ours, and
right. And science has only come to prove a lot of that stuff out. If you don't bathe in running water, now you have a cesspool. If you're doing surgery on one person, you don't clean up all your tools with, again, soap and water, and you give it to the next person, now you've infected two people.
Right.
And so, science has only proved that the Bible's been more correct the whole time. When you do these things, it's dangerous, and we're like, let's do those things. Oh, man.
Yeah, I remember Paul Harvey. I used to love listening to him when I was younger. And one of his stories, and what he would do, he would tell you the story that you'd always try to figure out what it was. He'd give you, the whole thing of this. And I remember one time he was talking about the mortality rate of women giving birth at a certain time was very high. And I remember listening to it, and I did think of this. And I said, I wonder if this all has to do with them not properly washing their hands. The people who are tending to the woman who's in labor and giving birth to the child. And sure enough, at the end of it, and he said, yeah, they fixed this problem by, that's when the doctors started washing and gloving up and started doing certain things and making it a more clean environment, that the mortality rate of the woman giving birth, almost went away completely. And so you see, again, this example played out where God's like, hey, it's not a sin, but just, I'm trying to teach you how to be clean. And besides that, don't bring that junk into my temple either, or to my place of worship, And
it's not much different with us and our kids. Like, they don't necessarily realize certain things. They're like, okay, that's just gross.
Yeah.
Stop letting your hands be all nasty and then walk around the house touching everything.
Yeah. Or do one of these, we see a kid sneeze into his hand and they're just touching everything.
Right.
It's like,
yeah. Did you commit a sin? No, but you're
unless
not,
it was done
not
intentionally. Clean. Watch this.
The evening thing, I don't know that I've ever actually really questioned it or thought about it too much, but that's another one to sort of just put on the shelf and sort of look more closely at it now. And why does God say they shall be unclean until evening? Why? Did Rico do anything?
No, I don't know.
Can you remember any of Rico's teaching? Rico Cortez?
Well, I would say you're unclean till evening because basically, if for that person, you're going to sleep. You're unclean. You're finished. Go sleep today. The next day is another day. So I mean, it's not like you're going to be up 24 hours doing this thing. It's like, hey, if you committed this says until evening, that means this is that part of that ritual. Part of that's done. You're clean. You're good to go. You can go sleep in your own bed. Next day starts the new day. Now you can eat.
That's how I feel. Again, it would be really hard for them to try to have any other standard than that. One, they don't have clocks. They don't have, ways of telling, and then evening shifts all over the place. One part of the year, evenings at 4:45. Another part of the year, it's at 9:15. So I was just saying, hey, when the day's over, whatever time that is, because it could have said at 6 o'clock, right? The Bible uses numbers all over the place.
Yep.
It could say that, but it's saying, hey, when your day's over, when we're done with the day, then you can start back and be clean again. And by the end of the day, what are you supposed to be doing at evening? You get home, you're spending your last few minutes with the family, you're getting clean, getting in bed. They went to bed early, they didn't have lights in their houses, they had little bitty Aladdin looking lamps, right? You're not doing much with that. So it's like you don't have any light. No one's up till 10, 12, 11 in the morning at night because it's bedtime. When it gets dark, you go to sleep. When it gets light, you wake up. So their schedule was dependent on sunlight. So when the sun came up, they don't have blackout curtains and stuff. They're in a in a regular type building. I'm sure the lights coming in, people are
They
moving
might not even have
around.
windows. Who knows?
They had animals, so like hey, the chicken probably was out there crowing. The birds probably were chirping. The animals probably were stirring and stuff. So you just kind of live life. So I do think it's more or less the day part of the day is over. And all the events of the day. There's no 24-hour Walmart. There's no gas station down the road. You can quick run by. And in the evening, everything's done. Everybody already ate. Everybody's cleaned up. The day's over. You can be clean now. There's nothing you can do.
And for me personally, in my studies with that, I found out that the delineation of time, I see that pattern walled out from Genesis where there was a day part that God created. Then it says, and there was evening and morning the first day. So we're seeing the delineation. I mean, right before that, he said, hey, the light I call day, the darkness I call night. And I think that's why Yeshua had to be very specific when he said he was going into the grave at that time. He says, I will be in 3 days and 3 nights. And to this day, I'm like, thank God you said that, because there wouldn't be a leg up for any of us on this is 3 literal days. Mm-hmm. Somebody could very easily go, well, he didn't. And they still do. They still go, oh, he didn't mean 3 literal days. Come on, man. He went on Friday, so that's 1 day. Saturday was in there, and then Sunday morning he rose up. That's 3 days. I'm like, well, I don't think.
Right. It's like 28 hours.
Yeah.
Like, it's 3 days. You're like, Technically, you can cover 3 days, in 24 hours in like 1 minute. Because you could have midnight the whole next day, and then that 1 minute after the next midnight. Mm-hmm. Technically, that's 3 days. Of course not.
Right.
You touched 3 days.
We got a comment here.
I assume it's Ian.
It is Ian. Yeah.
Could be an imposter.
Make sure I get my glasses at regular. It says, Ian says, my biggest hang up about uncleanness not being some form of sin is the sin sacrifice required after some uncleanness. And I would agree with you on that, Ian. I think some of it, if you're doing something that's profaning, and here it says to profane, then I agree with you that there would probably have to be an atonement for that. But for I wouldn't say accidental, but for like some uncleanness is like, again, if you had a dead animal or a loved one who died, preparing the body, or you had relations with your wife, different things like that. That doesn't necessarily, constitute a sin. But I think when we do something like in here, it talks again, the word profane is multiple times throughout this chapter 22. That when they've done something to profane it, then yes, they have to bring an offering for that. Hope that helps out a little bit. He says, after childbirth, a sin sacrifice is required. That's a good point, man. You sin by having a child. I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that one. If anybody else has got something they want to.
Well, wasn't it said that it was?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Think about it like this. Every time you make a bird sacrifice, it leaves you with potash. Potash is used to make what?
Soap.
There you go. Same antibacterial stuff going on. Literally cleaning.
So you're saying the sacrifice that was made was more purposely for making something for cleansing?
Well, I'm not saying that was the only reason.
Right.
There could be lots of reasons. There's the aspect of now nourishment loss, where that needs to be replenished for the woman. We have to take into consideration that all of these practices, whether it's a sacrifice or an offering, even though it's from us to him, it's always because he's doing something for us. Everything is for us, and how we are to. I'm not saying that's why we do it. We do it for him, but he does it for our benefit.
Right.
Every sacrifice, every offering that's made ultimately benefits us.
Yeah.
So Anyway, there's lots of different paths you can go down on that, but yeah, I would say that part of that has to do with cleaning up.
But burnt sacrifices we don't do anymore.
Yeah.
That was done away with when
Oh,
Christ died on the cross.
Right.
Was it?
Yes, it was. And that's biblical. So when Christ died on the cross, blood ordinances were done away with because he's the lamb. So you don't do burnt sacrifices anymore. That's what they did then because Christ had not come onto the stage yet. They did that before the Son of Man came on.
David, I'm not gonna say that I disagree with you, brother, and we're definitely not gonna debate right now, but we can't find that word for word anywhere in the scripture. We have to make assumptions in order to say that. So if you can't plainly read it, then we need to be careful about what we're saying is and is not definitely 100%
Well,
true.
I can get back with you if you want me. I can look it up for you. I don't know exactly where it's at, but I can look it up for you. Tell you where it's at.
That'd be great.
Yeah, Ian, I looked this up too. So that's in Leviticus 12 in verses 7 and 8. And it says, he shall offer them before the Lord to make atonement for her, and she will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for the woman who gives birth to a boy or a girl. If she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her and she will be clean. Yeah. I wish I knew more about that. I just don't, I don't know why that would be considered a sin or,
What is it? What I don't know.
or if that's actually for the child and more for the child than the woman, since it says we're all born into sin.
Right. That's what I was gonna say, and I wonder too if it's like categorized. It's not saying that she sinned or the child sinned, but it's a sin offering. So it falls in that category of offerings. These are the vow offering. This is the bread offering. This is the turtle dove. But for this one, you would be under this umbrella of offerings. And I do think it is that, when you're bringing that child into the world, then it's almost like we do baby dedication.
Baby dedication.
Very similar in that category, and the way it's always worked in my mind is not like the woman sinned because she got pregnant. Okay, come on now, obviously not. It's commanded to do it. The baby didn't sin because it just got born. It couldn't even have done nothing yet. And then if we want to go down the age of accountability, it's nowhere near that. So then I think it is more. There's a purposeful intent versus an actual there is a sin, meaning a transgression of the law. What law do they transgress?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think maybe it's more of a category of
maybe in a loosely way too. I remember in Job, it said that Job would give a sacrifice for his kids just in case, even if they hadn't sinned, but he gave up an offering for a sacrifice for them anyway. So I could see that in that particular meaning for, hey, this child, hey, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
More for the child than it is for the woman, possibly. I don't know.
Certainly on the surface, it doesn't necessarily make sense why she would need to give a sin sacrifice.
And in childbirth, you're bleeding a lot more than your monthly. So
right.
He's like, hey, this one's different than the one you do. Don't make this a regular or common. You bringing a child to the world is a different thing. So
some type of offering makes sense, but just it's labeled a sin offering doesn't necessarily make sense. I can understand needing to bring something for all the stuff that she went through and being unclean and all that jazz, but.
Yeah, Ian said, unsure. Just something I've been thinking about in terms of uncleanness. Maybe uncleanness is more than I got dirty. I need a shower. LOL. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. There could be a little bit more to that as well. So.
All right, 23.
Yep, 23. Let's do it.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all my words this time without failing. All right, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, these are the appointed feasts of the Lord, that you shall proclaim as holy convocations. They are my appointed feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, the holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at the time appointed for them. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight is the Lord's Passover, and on the 15th day of that same month is the feast of unleavened bread to the Lord. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, but you shall present a food offering to the Lord for 7 days. On the seventh day is a holy convocation. You shall not do any work, any ordinary work. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, When you come into the land that I give you and reap its harvest, you shall bring the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, so that you may be accepted. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, and on the day when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb, a year old, without blemish, as a burnt offering to the Lord. And the grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, a food offering to the Lord with a pleasing aroma. And the drink offering with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. And you shall eat neither bread nor grain, parched or fresh, until this same day, until you have brought the offering of your God. It is a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. You shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. You shall count 50 days to the day after the seventh Sabbath. Then you shall present a grain offering of new grain to the Lord. You shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be weighed, made of 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven, as first fruits to the Lord. And you shall present with the bread 7 lambs a year old without blemish, and 1 bull from the herd, and 2 rams. They shall be a burnt offering to the Lord, with their grain offering and their drink offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And you shall offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, and 2 male lambs a year old as a sacrifice of peace offering. And the priest shall wave them with the bread of the firstfruits as a wave offering before the Lord. With 2 lambs they shall be holy to the Lord for the priest. And you shall make a proclamation on the same day. You shall hold a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. It is a statute forever in all your dwelling places throughout your generations. And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, nor shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a day of solemn rest, a memorial proclaimed with blast of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, and you shall present a food offering to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Now on the 10th day of the 7th month is the day of atonement. It shall be for you a time of holy convocation, and you shall afflict yourselves, and present food offering to the Lord. And you shall not do any work on that day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whoever is not afflicted on that very day shall be cut off from his people, and whoever does any work on that very day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall not do any work. It is a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwelling places. It shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict yourselves. On the 9th day of the month, beginning at evening, from evening to evening, you shall keep your Sabbath. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of this 7th month, and for 7 days is the feast of booths to the Lord. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. For 7 days you shall present food offerings to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall hold a holy convocation and present a food offering to the Lord. It is a solemn assembly. You shall not do any ordinary work. These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim as times of holy convocation, for presenting to the Lord food offerings, burnt offerings, and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its proper day, besides the Lord's Sabbaths, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vow offerings, and besides all your freewill offerings, which you give to the Lord. On the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a gathering in the produce. You shall have gathered. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of splendid trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. You shall celebrate it as a feast to the Lord for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations, and you shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. Throughout your generations, you shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Thus Moses declared to the people of Israel the appointed feast of the Lord.
Ta-da.
That was some words.
Yeah, man.
All the words.
Dude, there was some really good stuff in there. Because I just want to start off. I jumped off the page.
All right.
Verse 38, besides the Lord's Sabbath and besides your gifts and besides all these other things. So it's saying these 7 days are different, unique, and beside your normal Sabbath. That's literally what that's saying as I'm reading it. These are the feast days that I want you to have. The 7 days of Passover, 1 day, 7 days of SUKKOT. Here's all the stuff that I want you to do. These are beside your Sabbaths. So here's your normal Sabbaths. Don't mess with these. Don't change these. These are unchangeable, unshiftable. They are beside that. And I was like, as I was reading, I was like, man, that helps me understand so much more of like, I can't adjust that schedule out. I can't move stuff on top of, beside, around, try to double up or anything like that. You know, it's almost as if he's saying, I'm giving you these, but don't mess them up because I already gave you the Sabbaths. You know, when we read back, we already got on verse 3, we already received the information on the Sabbath. So he's saying, here's your Sabbath. All the rest of the stuff I'm going to tell you is beside that. So do these, but also do these. They're not the same thing.
Yeah,
They may have the same word of Sabbath, but they are not the same thing.
David, ready to talk?
Well, going back to what I said earlier, I'm just letting you know, y'all can do it on your own time. It's in the book of Colossians, chapter 2. You can read it in there where the ordinances were nailed to the cross. So it's in there.
Which verse? I'll type it in the group.
We're gonna go down a completely different path if y'all wanna pursue that.
No, I'm just gonna write the verse down.
I'm just saying you can do it in your own time. I didn't say do it now.
Colossians
I'm
2.
just saying, just to answer the question, it's in the book of Colossians, chapter 2.
Verse
Yeah.
1.
Thank you, sir.
And
I
Mr.
believe it's verse 14, but
Mr. David, also, if I encourage you to tune into my sermon later this afternoon, if you can, sir, because I'm actually going to cover that.
Hey.
Perfect.
And we're going to talk about what was actually nailed to the cross.
Old rugged.
The old rugged cross. So if you can, please be a part of that with us.
I
And
typed it there in the chat for you, Mr. David.
I mean, okay, well, chapter by chapter, verse by verse.
Yeah, exactly. Precept upon precept comes out of Isaiah. Thank you.
That's correct.
awesome, brother. Yeah, I look forward to it, man. Anyway, going back to what you were saying as well. So what that tells me too with his appointed times, and again, this isn't a knock on anybody, so let me put that out there ahead of time. This isn't a knock on anyone's calendar or anything that you're doing. God bless everybody, that we're all trying to do the best that we can, period. But, you know, when we were looking at the word profane in chapter 22, and we've had this discussion with the three of us, how when we follow a certain calendar, we follow a certain thing, and the one thing that's always came to my mind early on was, how is it that we never seem to do the path? Like he's telling you right here, we just this isn't just about SUKKOT.
Right.
He literally listed off all of them, right? Yep. He says on this day, on the 14th day of the first month, you know, all that he's telling you, all the appointed times, period. So when we follow certain calendars, and again, not insulting anybody whatsoever, we're all doing the best we can. But the thing that always confused me a little bit is as we went through the year, how we could have one of these set apart days is right here, what you're saying, Jonathan, in 38 says, besides your Sabbaths, besides your gifts, besides all your vows, besides all your voluntary offerings, which you are to give to Jehovah, besides all of these this is an ordinance forever, right? And he didn't say that any of these days overrid another day. He didn't say, well, if it happens to fall on a Sabbath,
Right.
then this day is more important than the Sabbath. And then you see through God's creation that we never see any examples through all the scripture that we do have, or even extra biblical text, that anyone say, oh, well, the book of so-and-so goes, oh, this day, this feast day fell on the Sabbath, and so we just had a double Sabbath, or we had a whatever. Like this, a few weekends back, we had a thing that happened where there was 3 events taking place on the same weekend. And I was like, wow, so that's one of the examples I've been thinking of for a while is how can we have Yom Teruah and the Sabbath and those who do the sighted moon all happen on the same day? Mm-hmm. And that, to me, it is very clear in the book of Jubilees, chapter 6. It goes through this and it tells us, hey, that word profane is in there. And so I thought it was interesting that we see the word profane in chapter 22 a lot. Because God's saying, hey, when I've set these things apart, is that word set apart's in there more times than the word profane, we are to be set apart, then we can't have a blending or a mixing or a combination or saying, hey, in the past, I remember other feast days falling on the Sabbath and someone go, oh, or maybe it fell on that Sunday. So we got a double Sabbath. So we got 2 days of non-work, 2 days of, whatever it might be. And it just in my spirit, it didn't resonate. Like, I don't think this is the proper order that Abba has this in. And so, and we're not saying the calendar we're on is perfect or anything like that. But one of the things I did,
we're still testing.
Right, we're still testing it out. But one of the things I did like while we were testing it was all the Sabbaths fall on the 52 weeks, and all of your feast days fall, and none of them touch each other. None of them overlap. You're not going to have that, and like Jonathan was saying earlier, how simple is this that when you need a time, because a lot of people have to take time off from work in advance, like way in advance. So how simple is it that you could go and figure it out yourself? Oh, these are going to be the days that we're going to do this, So
I will say Yom Teruah, it will always be on the new moon. So you will have those two together. Even on ZECHARIAH, if it's only 4 new moons a year, but that's built in.
Right.
That's sometimes it'll be and sometimes it won't be. They're always 2 celebrations together.
Right.
That's the only one I can think of, though.
The heads of the month, though, does he actually refer to those as Sabbaths or days of memorial?
Yeah, it wasn't listed here in all the feast days or the Sabbaths. We just read them all.
Yeah, no, it covers all of it. So,
Hey guys, if y'all don't mind, let me dig in here for just a minute. I know it's real easy for us to want to go down the rabbit trail of digging into this calendar stuff because it's still so widely debated and we don't have 100% of everything figured out. So I know it's easy to go down that. I'm curious as to what the rest of this is that these passages are saying, that these scriptures are saying. What's a little more depth to this that maybe we're getting caught up on the surface stuff. What are the underlying things that we're missing?
God says, "Do what I say when I say it and how I say it."
Yeah, and kind of with respect, of course. I mean, that was where my initial direction was going. Was it's not about the calendar. It's about if it's saying do these beside, then I think it does affect. We have to be careful not to double up. And so it doesn't matter. I don't care. We can label whatever calendar we want, but I don't want to be saying I'm doing trumpets or whatever or Day of Atonement on a Sabbath when it's telling me to do it beside the Sabbath. So in order to dig in to even get it right, so we're not profaning the day, it is important to at least look at it from that perspective. Maybe we're doing evening to evening, day to day, week to week, whatever, right? I honestly I'm not going to dig in that far, but to say that I don't want to have them mixed in or overlapping, That's to me, that's a level one. That's the first step is, okay, are we even doing this any kind of resemblance to what the Bible is talking about? So now that we know we're at least in the right arena, then now can we do it correctly on that day, right? So if we're doing it on the wrong day, it's almost like, I'm not gonna say God doesn't honor it, but it was like, well, you just did it on the wrong day, so you could have did it perfectly. Like if you someone celebrates your birthday perfectly on 3 months away, you'd be like, man, it was great, but my birthday didn't come up yet, so
And I wasn't even there.
right, yeah, it was a meeting that you had by yourself,
Right.
and you did it awesome, but I wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
You get my appreciation, but
Right.
I didn't.
So that was the only reason why I even went that direction. And then I was going to bring up just slightly, not calendar, but distinction is in Passover. The one that was interesting, the word used there was at twilight, and it says the Hebrew between two evenings. So I thought that was interesting. You brought up the word twilight because the ESV tries to get those words locked in, and then also with atonement, it tells us evening to evening. So we definitely get some distinction of here's all the Sabbaths and all the other feast days, but then now these two are saying something different. These two are giving us an extra requirement compared to what normally is going on. So I thought that those were interesting, at least to bring up and how we're supposed to do them and what the intent behind those were, especially in comparison to 52 Sabbaths and additional 6 to 15 more, feast days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also say for me, digging in deeper outside the calendar stuff, for me, when I look at this, I just see that the Father has everything for the Father does is with precision. From everything, and I believe he gives us these things to make them simple because we know that a lot of end time, or we feel like a lot of end time prophetic things are going to happen based upon his calendar. With all he's going to return during the fall feast, the last trumpet, all that stuff. Is that really going to play out? We'll know when we get there. If we lived long enough to get there. But I believe also this is always a remembrance because he knows how easily we can forget.
Yeah.
It gets in 43 and it says, let's go to 42. It says, dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native born to Israel dwell in booths. Why does it have to be native born Israel? What do you think about that? Anybody?
Because what's set the example?
Right.
Because it'll later tell you the sojourners as well. So it's saying you native borns must do this.
Yeah.
And Moses is saying, I'm talking to you, native born people. Hey, you need to do this. Not to mention, we just left Sinai, right? I'm thinking, am I wrong?
It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah. So whenever they're bringing in the mixed multitude, he's already setting up standards of like, hey, if you're native born, you really have to do this. Now, on top, everybody's going to be joining in with you, like Abraham. We were talking about Abraham doing the first SUKKOT in Jubilees, and he said that he didn't just do it by himself. He wasn't out there in the field, just him and his couple people. It was him, all his workers, all the slaves,
Everybody,
the kids, all the sojourners, everybody who was grafted in. They all were out there with him. And he built the altar, walked around it 7 times a day, every day. He's like literally saying, I'm worshiping God, I'm proclaiming God unashamedly. I'm doing exactly what I was told to do.
Yep.
And he didn't just say, oh, nope, it's only for me, because he wasn't even native born to Israel. He was from the Chaldees, of Ur, right? He wasn't even part of that original group that was over there. So very interesting on that, of why I just say native born.
yeah, because you got to set the example, first of all. And 2, he doesn't want them to forget. That's why, he says, 43, so that your generations know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Jehovah, your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak the appointed times of Jehovah to the children of Israel. So we see that, he, on top of the prophetic, on top of, everything else, he's saying, hey, don't forget who brought you out. And I don't want to, look, I'm a jealous God too. So I don't want down the road somebody saying, well, it was by the spirit of Baal. It was by the spirit of some, by this other God of Ra. He's like, no, I'm the one who brought you out by a mighty hand. So this is going to be an ordinance forever so that all the generations won't forget who I am. So for me, that's the going into the deeper underlying parts of this. And then each feast day, of course, we could break down each feast day like you know,
To infinity.
yeah, 3 ways on Sunday and twice on Tuesday. We could break them all down, and then of course show Yeshua in every one of those feast days, and see the plan of salvation in every one of the feast days.
Sylvia?
Well, if we, a couple things here. In Exodus 31:12, he's saying that, but as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, you shall surely observe my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know I am the Lord who sanctifies you. And so if you're looking at that, his Sabbaths is a sign, it's the word oath. And when you, in breaking down in the paleo, that word oath and those definitions, it literally means to seven oneself. An oath usually contains something that's repeated 7 times and or contains 7 things. You see in Genesis 12, when he tells Abraham to come out of your country, out of your father's house, he lists 7 things. That 7th thing is that through you, the generation, the nations will be blessed, because he's bringing in, Greek, Jew, Gentiles, all alike. You also see when he's taking them into the land, he says, I will bring about, I will go before you, I will drive out your enemies. There's 7 I wills. Well, when you see this 7th day, it's a picture of that promise. It's that promise of that 7-year millennium. Every week is this reminder of us doing this. We have the 7 feast. Even within the 7th feast, on the front end and the back end, we have another set of 7, which is everything is full of these 7s, which is a constant sign of, remember, this is an oath. This is my mark on you. So this is one of the things that differentiates his people, are those that are walking in those things. And when he says throughout your generations or forever, I mean, forever is forever.
Yep.
And we see even in the prophecies going down, when New Jerusalem is established, those who are not going down for SUKKOT are not going to get any rain. Well, guess what? If you don't have any rain, you ain't getting any crops. So you're going to starve.
No soup.
So, exactly. So it's that oath, that's that sign or that mark that's upon us that we belong to him. So there's that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I said, we were just studying on our Anger to Truth video about Abraham going around the altar 7 times a day. And that's every day of SUKKOT, he was doing something 7 times. Like essentially, like me personally, me as the group, and then the 7-day period, and then this is the 7th feast. So yeah, it's 7 just thrown in there all over the place, as in like he's like me and God personally have an oath. So I really love that you said that, Miss Sylvia, and especially because Sabbath falls on that 7th day, right? Every 7 days we have a Sabbath, so that's a weekly reminder. And I think one of the things we can pull out of that is one of the things I think we're really good in our communities, and maybe some outside communities are really good at saying every Sabbath take a rest day. I think we kind of all learned that. We figured that out. We kind of got that ingrained. We don't read the first part of that verse where it says 6 days work shall be done. God's instructions aren't work 5 days and take 2 days off. His instructions are work 6 days and take 1 day off. So we're really good at listening to take a day off. Easy, pretty peasy. You got that all day. He's like, yeah, but I told you to work 6 days. So are we only meeting half of that commandment? I'm asking you to work 6 days. I'm also asking you to rest 1 day. If you aren't doing both of these, you're missing the mark a little bit. And that's something that I've been really convicted by, where it's like, my Sundays, I try to find any and everything. I'm like, I'm gonna fix the car, I'm gonna mow the grass, I'm gonna go out to the church property. Like, when you gonna be out there? I'm gonna cut the grass in the morning, I'm going to cut my own grass, I'm gonna try to get on my computer, maybe get some stuff done, build some stuff for YouTube or whatever. Just something to make sure I'm active and working, because if God's saying you want these blessings, you have to do it my way. And my way is you work 6 days. You don't get to have this extra, just free day of lounging and stuff all like that. We kind of build in our world today.
Yeah, that's the conversation. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. We do that same thing on Sundays. That's our day to get stuff that needs to be done in the yard and in the house. There isn't always something to do, and sometimes it's just that day we're working on our relationship with one another.
Very
Yeah,
good.
I'm always being busy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a conversation that I know me and Ian and a group of guys, we've had that discussion before. Ian had brought it up, I believe, about, about working 6 days a week. Are we supposed to be working 6 days a week? And then, but Ian, if you're still on there, feel free to comment on that. But that is something that, for me personally, my mind changed a while back because I was like, you know what? Sunday is the first day of the week, so technically I could go do work. I can go get something done. You know what I mean? And not wait till Monday to do that. And that was not a hard paradigm shift, but it was a little bit of a paradigm shift in my brain. Going, oh yeah, because I was used to working 5 days. Hey, we got 2 days off. That's a win-win. you know.
Or the other way, I was used to working on Saturday.
Yeah, but yeah, for my wife, Saturdays was her cutting grass and doing all the yard work, and which for a lot of people.
I worked for a Jewish doctor for years, and they're open 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I worked with him on Saturday. So there.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of those things, But,
We know, well, I believe that God does want to bless the work of our hands. So even if it's not a command to work 6 days, because it says it shall be done, he doesn't say I command you to work 6 days. So I don't know that it's like a command thing.
What about thou shalt not kill? It's just a shall. No big deal, right? Not a command. I think shall means a little bit more than we kind of use it in our English today. But yes, I know what you're getting at. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, in a law firm, when you're doing contracts and stuff, you don't want to ever use the word like may. We use shall because that's definite.
Yeah.
Shall, it's going to be done. So you, and legal, that shall is a definite.
Okay. And when you look up the, I guess the etymology or whatever, the root word for where that came from, shall do work, it says to do, accomplish, make, produce, to work. Yeah.
Well, and let's face it too. The
And it's a
time
verb.
this was written, their work day for them, work was life.
Yeah.
If you didn't work, the animals didn't get fed. There was no food on the table, so to speak. There was nothing got done. So I think it was one of those things where it's like, hey, you shall be working the 6 days out of the week. And for them, work was more, like I said, it was life. For us, work is you work for the government, you work for an independent company out, where you're at now.
Yeah.
So everyone has their what was that word we use?
Occupation?
Yeah, not occupation. Is it mundane work or what's that word? You shall do no ordinary work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you do for a living, that's how we apply it today.
Yeah.
Back then, it was work just living. If I had friends who would work their relatives' farms during the summer. And usually they come back all bowled up from throwing the hay. We all played football and stuff. And it's like, he would always come back all jacked up from doing work on the farm. Because it was physical work.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he went to his grandparents' house up in Greenville and he was playing Game Boy the whole time.
Right.
I was like, no. Yeah, he's like, no, son, you're out there, you're going to be throwing the hay, you're going to be milking the cows, whatever it takes to make this run, you're going to be a part of that. That was considered work for them.
Joe, like my cousins, Lydia and Jeff, that live up north.
Yeah.
They have like my relatives that live up north, and they have a farm. They have never ever left the farm because that's their responsibility. That is their livelihood and their work. Kind of like, if you want to say biblical days.
Yeah, I don't know. Those people ever
And
take a
they've never
vacation.
left.
Seriously.
They've had people come visit them, but they've never left because they have that responsibility of the farm.
I'll take this all the way back to the beginning in Genesis when God made man, and then the very first thing he had him do was go work the garden. He put him in the garden to work the garden. And so if that's what he made us for, and this was like a paradigm shift for something I had to kind of understand. Where like every day is sort of like a new beginning. And you can find evidence for that in scripture. It just didn't make sense to me for a while. But if every day is a renewal and our purpose was to work, then every day we are to work. And God just makes an exception for that one Sabbath day.
Right.
But every day we're supposed to work. That's the way he made us.
I think what to that point, one of the things that I was looking at too is, how much more do you have to trust and rely on the Father? If you need to work every day for things to work, your animals don't get fed, your wells don't get, your buckets don't get filled, you're taking a whole day off. You're like, I'm not doing none of that stuff I normally do. You truly have to trust God and understand that He said, I asked you to do this. Don't worry about it. Same thing with the manna. Hey, you're not going to get anything on Saturday. You better get all you need on Friday because this day is off. And, you know, when we think about it, like, there's stuff we have to do every day, like, what, you know, feed the fish, feed the chickens, do whatever, right? And you're like,
children.
you're telling me I have to take a day off? Okay, God, I'm trusting you because this is a day I can get some stuff done. I might actually be able to move my budget, my produce forward a day, but you're telling me not to. And then you guys like, yeah, don't worry about it. When you do what I'm asking you to do, everything you do will be better. You will have, your cattle will have more offspring. Your grain will grow bigger, better, stronger, just because you're listening and doing what I asked. And even though it looks like it doesn't make sense to the world, it makes perfect sense to God.
Amen. Real quick, Ian says, I think we also have a different culture today. We look forward to our time off, so the rest of the day of the Sabbath is easy. Back then, I believe their work was what they looked forward to. So the rest of the day was difficult for them, maybe. I agree with it. I mean, it's a whole different mentality that we can't even understand today.
Agreed.
Then he said they had to force themselves to rest one day. We have to force ourselves to work 6 days. Yep, that's right.
All right,
I don't want to go.
That's right.
Kyle, then Sylvia.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I posed this question before, not today, but I'm still curious about this. It keeps popping up in my mind, like, what would have had to have happened when someone was coming from out of town and they had to go to the temple for whatever reason, where they had to go be with the group for whatever reason. So whether it be SUKKOT or Passover or, you know, any of these times of the year that they were supposed to go before the Lord. Well, that would have been a requirement for everyone, not just the head of the household. So in that case, are they taking their entire flock with them? Like how are they dealing with these situations? Does anybody have any
I do not.
thoughts on that?
Doesn't the scripture say there's 3 times a year you go down? Which, so if you go in the spring or unleavened bread, Shavuot, SUKKOT, if you're going to be there for unleavened, you're going to be there at Passover and the others. You're going to take yourself to the temple. But it says you're young men. So the men are going down, but there's also, I can't tell you offhand where it is, but I will try to find it. There's a scripture that says that your property and everything will be safe while you're going to keep the feast. He's got your stuff covered. But I don't think the whole family has to go down. But at least the young men, the heads of the family, the priests of the home,
that's correct.
had to go down and do it. And also that word for shall is hayah, which hayah is also the word hayah, asher, hayah, I am, that I am. So shall is also I am. Same word.
Thank you.
I did not know.
Did you have something separate, or was that your state? Oh, okay.
No, just it's age 1921 or 1961 is the strong number. I forget which one.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And Ian also said the men go to the temple, the women, etc., can stay behind to care for the livestock, etc. Oh, he said, never mind. She said, well, there's a lag here somewhere. So it's all good. We're all saying the same thing. So it's good. Yeah.
Digging into the translation sometimes can be, at least for me, kind of aggravating because you just brought up a different word for shall, but in Leviticus 23:3, it says asa, may be done. 6 days may be done work, but on day, so mine says asa, doesn't have what she mentioned.
No. What version are you reading out of, if you don't mind, for the group?
ESV, but then this table below displays the NASB text, but it goes back to the Strong's and the Hebrew.
Asa means what?
Well, there's
To do, fashion, accomplish, make.
Maybe. In other words, maybe. Asa in Japanese means morning.
Oh,
I mean, it
interesting.
could be pronounced Ase. I don't know.
The only other thing that really jumped out, obviously, every single one of these was perpetual. always, forever, continual. That word was pretty prominent throughout. And then when it spoke about the work, it definitely mentioned ordinary work. So I think Joe brought that up earlier. And you know, that's important for us to kind of look at. I think, you know, some through tradition over time, you know, ordinary work has turned into any and every possible movement of your body, you know, can be considered work. And I think we have to be a little bit more careful not to over apply that word work.
Right.
You know, like, well, you know, like turning on a light switch, you know, like I can tell you, I promise you, it didn't cause me any work, right, to turn my light switch on. And especially it's not anything ordinary like that might be my occupation or something where I would normally get my paycheck from, or where I'm normally required to be 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. So I think it's something we can be careful on, not to be overzealous on the don't do work. Because, like I said, Yeshua's example was clearly not staying in his tent all day long and not going anywhere doing anything. He was out and about and doing stuff, but not any whatever he would have normally been doing. I'm sure he would have told Paul on his blinding vision, "Hey, don't make no tents on Saturday. You know,
Right.
you can go be a missionary, you can go set up church, you can go have service, but don't make any tents today."
Yeah.
Luke, don't be a doctor today, unless someone's gonna die.
Right. Life is important.
Right.
I do wonder, you know, where that dividing line is. Sort of like, when do you cross the line from this is your ordinary work versus not your ordinary work? Because if you do have animals and things like that, I would assume there are parts of that you can't take a day off. I mean, depending on what animal it is and what the needs are.
I don't think there's ever an issue with and it would take care of your livestock, or I think there's actually a scripture somewhere I remember reading about that. It says, "Hey, don't you do this?" And I can't remember exactly where it is. So life is important. Torah is life. So you wouldn't starve, you know, your animals or neglect them of water, just like you wouldn't do that on your Sabbath. You wouldn't tell your family, "Hey, you can't eat."
Right.
You know, so it's the same thing. I think what it is too is our mentality. And I agree with Ian on this one that, you know, when it says you shall work, maybe saying, "Hey, I'm going to let you work because maybe you want to work. Maybe you're so geared up, you know, that you want to work. So I'm going to let you work the 6 days, but the seventh day, it's going to be difficult for you to like kind of chill out." And I think that's why when we read earlier in the scripture, when Moses was first telling him, he told him, "Don't even come out of your tent that day." I think, and to me, that wasn't a command that we all stay in our tent all day. I think for them, it was such a big learning curve, and it's such a big paradigm shift. He's like, "Look, this is going to be really hard for you. So your best bet is to stay in the tent all day, get you a bag of pretzels, and go eat it. You can get some water, but just don't do anything today until you start getting into the rhythm of what Abba's actually wanted, you know, you to do."
Yeah, I think God had to be sort of harsh or heavy-handed, or I don't know, real super strict at first.
Right.
Sort of just that hard, abrupt change that they had to go through.
Well, and you think too with that, they're coming out of Babylon, harsh instruction. They're coming out of Egypt, harsh instructions, because they're literally changing the way they've been living for the last 50, 100, 300 years or whatever. They're saying, "You were living this way, and now you're going to do something totally different. And I need this stark shift." You know, where like after, you know, maybe they're in the land for a couple hundred years, it's like, "Hey, you know, tweak this. Make sure every 7 years let the land rest." He didn't need to go back and say, "All right, Sabbath day, stay in your tents." You know, they kind of had already established some of that, and of course, they kept messing it up over and over again. But I think, yeah, you're right. Whenever they're coming out of this bondage or out of these dispersion times, it's like, "All right, when we come back, we're gonna have to hit this hard and heavy again. We're gonna have to make sure, look, this is what got you in that place in the first place. So now that we're here, now that we're trying to reestablish this covenant that I never broke, but you did, let's go back and try to set this thing right. Let's try to go back and set this straight." And, you know, with the animals, I think, of course, back then, you know, they live different, they act different, they work different. But, you know, feeding your animal, and anyways, you could throw an extra bale of hay out, fill the bucket with water, right? You didn't have to, you know, you can do some stuff in advance. That's why it's called prep day.
Yeah.
Prepare yourself and your animals and your house and everything for tomorrow. Now, if they're completely bone dry, you know, or it's raining like crazy and the animals are sitting out in the woods, you know, bring them into the shelter, right? Don't leave them out there to die.
Right. It's good to do good.
Because that's something you're doing because of that moment. You're doing that you're interacting with the real world. But just to say, tomorrow I'm gonna feed the animals, and, you know, I might go for. It's like, well, you could have did that in advance.
Any normal day.
I think. Well, here's my thing.
Don't take them to market and sell them and all that stuff.
I think when the way that we can profane that day, we start thinking about, well, what about if I do this or if I do that? I think a lot of it too is, what is your mentality on this day? I read out of Isaiah every week. At the beginning of the service, it says, hey, if you turn your foot back to doing the Sabbaths, and not doing your own thing, like doing whatever it is you want to do, like, hey, I'm going to take off work today, but I'm going to go out on the boat and fish all day long. Maybe God doesn't want you to go out on the boat and fish all day long, or I'm going to go do this, or cutting the grass is relaxing to me because it's not my job, or we do certain things. And I'm not here to tell anybody how to do your Sabbath, but I think it's the mentality part. God's going, where's your heart at? Because I set this time aside to be with you, and I would like my children to be together on this day to also fellowship. And there I am in the midst of the camp of them, or wherever when the assembly comes together. So I think we can lose focus on, it's just a day off.
Rest
Because
day.
let's think about it, man. When we were working the 5 days and we got the weekend off, what was it? That's just my time off to do whatever I want. Do whatever, yeah. So I think that's where that's the mentality that I try to be careful of is not necessarily the do's and the don'ts. And like some people might get hung up on flipping a light switch. And I know that some people won't drive in a car because there's combustion and fire and different things. And you know what? And that's okay. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I think you're trying to do what you feel like is honoring to the Father. But I think the danger point in this is when we start to do the things that I just want to do this. So you didn't read the Word, you didn't spend any time with God, you didn't spend any time with nobody else. You just did whatever you wanted to do. Yeah, kind of.
That sounds like a you day, not a
Yes, it's a you day.
To the translation stuff that's popping up, and Jonathan, this is kind of at you, not in a bad way. You shall not murder, right? That word there in the command, the list of commands, you shall not have any other God, you shall not murder. That word is different than what pops up there at the beginning of Leviticus, where it says you shall work 6 days. That's actually a different word. So
which word is it, Mr. Sergei?
So what Sylvia brought up earlier, ahaya, that's the one for in the commandments, you shall not, right? But then in Leviticus, it's the one I said, asa.
Yep.
Yeah, there's another vogue too. So it looks like there's several words used for which is probably just click on that first one, kind of going back to Genesis. So it is 3 different words in there. So I corrected on that one. And then the scripture that I found I posted in there also is all of your men shall appear before me, not young men. So I don't know. I think I probably just memorized that wrong, or it was from a bad translation. I memorized all the men shall appear before Yahweh. Then those 3 he listed are the 11 Shavuot and Sukkot. And I know it's mentioned in Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Exodus. And it also says, and they shall not come before me empty-handed. And I think those are the time, those are all, we're bringing a type of first fruits, because you have immediately following that Sabbath after unleavened bread, you've got the Feast of Barley, and I have some of the Qumran documents to show it is first fruits of barley does fall on the 26th of the first month, and I can post those over if you want to.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then you have the first fruits of wheat at Shavuot after the count, the 7-week count, and then you have that rest of, we have those celebrations of harvest, because there's harvesting seasons. The very first harvest is the barley to come in for all of those 7 months. Those feast months, we have harvests that are coming in. I think the remainder of the harvest from wheat until Sukkot, we bring that in at Sukkot. And why I say that is I know there's when we're reading in Jubilees, the story of Noah, when it says he planted a vineyard. And when you plant any kind of the fruit tree, you don't, for the first 3 years, you don't eat, you don't partake of it. And that's actually those 3 years, those trees are getting established and strengthening themselves and producing, and the fruit that falls on the ground, they actually use what's in the fruit that's dying in the ground to absorb it to the roots to grow stronger for the next year. It says in the 4th year, it's holy unto Yah, and in the 5th year, you can partake. And so when we see that story in Jubilees with Noah, it says on the 4th year, he gathered the grapes and the wine. But if you just read a few verses later, it says, and at the beginning of the 5th year, he poured some of the wine and the oil on the altar, and then he partook of it. So he partook of it in the 5th year, but it was set apart holy because that first part had to go on the altar to Yahweh before he could partake of any of it. So it does explain that.
Yeah, and partake of it, he did.
Yes, he did. He's not been waiting a
Well,
long
he
time.
woke up later and was like, what happened?
I got 6 years worth.
What's going on here? All right, guys, so we're gonna Ian, you posted Zechariah earlier. That's exactly where we're going, brother. We're going to Zechariah chapter 14, and we're gonna be reading the entire chapter. It says in verse 20, but there's only one more verse, so why not just finish it off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, give me that chapter one more time.
14. It's the last chapter in Zechariah. It's right after Hosea. Can you see
Ugh, almost
Zephaniah,
Yeah, it's different from mine. I'm after
Haggai?
that guy.
Haggai. There we go. All right, we there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, chapter 14, it says, see, a day shall come for Jehovah, and your spoil shall be divided into your midst, and I shall gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken, the houses plundered, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into exile, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And Jehovah shall go forth, and he shall fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. And in that day his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. And on the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall move towards the north, and half of it towards the south. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountain, for the valley of the mountains reaches to Asal, and you shall flee as you fled from the earthquakes in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Yehudah. Then Jehovah my Elohim shall come, all the set apart ones with you. And in that day it shall be, there is no light, it is dark. And it shall be one day which is known to Jehovah, neither day nor night, but at evening time there shall be light. And in that day it shall be that living waters flow from Jerusalem, half of them towards the eastern sea, and half of them towards the western sea, in summer as well as in winter. And Jehovah shall be sovereign over all the earth, and in that day there shall be one Jehovah, and his name one. And the land shall be changed into a desert plain from Geba to Ramon, south of Jerusalem, and she shall be raised up and inhabited in her place, from Benjamin's gate to the place of the first gate, and the corner gate, and from the tower of Hanel to the wine presses of the sovereign. Then they shall dwell in her, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this is the plague with which Jehovah plagues all the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall decay while they stand on their feet. That's crazy. Their flesh shall decay while they stand on their feet, and their eyes decay in their sockets, and their tongues decay in their mouths. And it shall be in that day that a great confusion from Jehovah is among them, and every one of them shall seize the hand of his neighbor, and his hand rise up against his neighbor's hand. And Yehudah shall fight at Jerusalem as well, and the wealth of all the nations round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and garments in great quantities. So also is the plague on the horse and the mule, on the camel and the donkey, and all the cattle that are in those camps, as this plague. And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign Jehovah of hosts and to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. And it shall be that if any one of the clans of the earth does not come up to Jerusalem to bow himself to the sovereign Jehovah of hosts, on them there will be no rain. And if the clan of Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, there is no rain. On them is the plague which Jehovah plagues the nations who do not come up to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. This is the punishment of Mitzrayim and of the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. In that day, set apart to Jehovah shall be engraved on the bells of the horses, and on the pots of the house of Jehovah shall be like the bowls before the slaughter place. And every pot in Jerusalem and Yehudah shall be set apart to Jehovah of hosts, and all those who slaughter shall come and take them and cook in them, and there shall no longer be a merchant in the house of Jehovah of hosts in that day. So what you got?
I don't know, there's a lot in there.
Verse 2. Some of this is God talking, I'm guessing.
Uh-huh.
For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. Very interesting on like when we kind of even break that, I think the idea of that, right? God's bringing down New Jerusalem, or this is the traditional Jerusalem that's in the land today, regardless of which one. He's saying, I'm going to like cause the stir in the world.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it be like the two witnesses, whether it be Yeshua coming back, whether, whatever the sun not coming up, and everybody's like, I don't know, it must be those people over there in Jerusalem. So he's whatever's going to happen is going to cause all the nations to want to fight Jerusalem. So I think that's crazy in and of itself, because we always assume, right? It's like, oh, the bad guys are going to try to defeat the good guys. But God's like, no, what I'm doing is going to force them here. Whatever this thing that's going to happen is like, I'm in charge still.
I have an idea.
Go ahead, shoot.
All right, my idea on that is I believe this is the New Jerusalem that's coming down. And now think about this. No one, a lot in the church, I think we're primarily taught, this is the way I believe for a long time at least, that when I never thought of the New Jerusalem being here until it was all said and done. Like after the 1,000-year reign, New Jerusalem comes down, then God's with us, God and Yeshua's with us, no need for sun, moon, all that stuff, the whole 9 yards. And when you go back and you read it again, this is what I said a few months back, is I encouraged everyone, go back and read Revelation, I think it's 19 through 21, or maybe it's 20 through 21, and read it slowly. Because when you're reading it, to me, now what I'm seeing is the New Jerusalem, they're wanting to build a new temple. And to me, that's an abomination. I think that personally, I'm not in support of that new temple whatsoever. Yeah. I think that there's going to be a lot of bad things that come out of that, not good things. And besides that, did God commission there to be a third temple? Right?
Not that I know of.
Right. And so put that aside for now. But so in this scenario, Jonathan, when we're looking at this, most people are thinking that the third temple is the temple, right? The one that Jesus is going to, be serving from. Well, he's not going to serve in a temple made by man's hands. And he's in his glorified body. He's not coming here to serve in something that somebody else made. So how about this? This whole thing we've been getting jacked up about UFOs for since Roswell. How long has that been? 60, 70, I don't know, at least 60 years, right? 70 years? Yeah, UFOs, aliens, good, bad aliens, Independence Day, the White House, blown to pieces, right? Destruction of the whole world. All this stuff keeps building up. Well, man, we don't even know what the New Jerusalem technically is going to look like when it's coming out of the sky. What if, what if, because everybody's mentality in the world is, and because there's always little hints. We think there might be this gigantic mothership floating right outside our galaxy, and they keep putting these thoughts in your head. Well, man, the New Jerusalem's going to be huge.
It's going to look like what they're talking about.
It's going to look like a mothership.
From a guy coming down,
right?
Down
right.
the mountain goes,
Right.
you're like, nations.
Yeah, so you got, Yeshua coming down, his feet hitting the Mount of Olives, things are busting open. You got the mothership coming down, aka the New Jerusalem, the bride. And so that would immediately make the nations want to draw to God's like, yeah, when I show up with this, y'all gonna think you just got invaded from aliens from another planet. But as he says, when they're being drawn in this, because they're thinking, oh, this is an alien. These are the ones coming to attack us, right? And so, yeah, you would have all the nations scrambling, jet fighter planes going out, ships out in the ocean doing all their thing. But no matter what they bring against that structure, that ain't gonna happen. They're not going to be able to defeat any of that. And then at some point, when the dust settles, guys will be like, by the way, it's me, guys. And no soup for you.
For me, I'm definitely going to go with this being the Jerusalem that's already there, because in 2 it says, and the city shall be taken. Like, to me, there's no way in the world God lets the New Jerusalem be taken.
So where you at?
Verse 2. For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken.
Right. So how about if this is prior to, because his feet hadn't hit Mount of Olives yet.
Mm-hmm.
So what the current place of Jerusalem is, it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. Guys like, we're going to clean some of this out. We're going to take care of business. You know what I'm saying?
See, now that's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be overly ambitious on my wording, because it could kind of float a little bit. But it seems like God's like, hey, man, this right here, this ain't it. And I've been told you this ain't it. If you're looking for the holy city, that's a place where things have happened in history. But if you're looking for the holy city, that's not this one down here. Like, you guys are missing the mark. If you think you can go there and then get more holy than where I'm at holy. Be holy because I'm holy, not be holy because the city that's there in the land of Israel is holy. Right? That's still just a city. So I do contemplate the idea where the God's like, yeah, I remember the valleys raised up, the mountains made low, and all this stuff has to move, and all these positions have to shift. So God's getting the glory only. He's like, I'm bringing you the city that I've been talking to you about. What you're doing, I understand, but I'm bringing you the city. So if everybody's trying to build the temple, they're essentially trying to circumnavigate God and His plan. He said, I'm bringing you a new Jerusalem. They're like, well, what if we build a Jerusalem? I'm going to bring you a temple. Well, what if we build a temple? He's like, didn't ask you to do none of that stuff. You keep doing stuff that's outside of my plan. So yeah, I might have to get that out the way and let everybody know, hey, appreciate you for trying. That wasn't it. Here it comes, right? You get excited. Here comes Jesus to initiate the process. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot more stuff we can dig into there, like even trying to understand prophecy and what's actually happening. Because there's more to that story than just, oh, there's this awesome city and God's going to preserve it forever. And He's like, no, I'm going to literally drop a whole nother city on top of it. Bigger and better than anything you could ever imagine. And that city's going to mean nothing.
Right.
And I don't mean that in a bad way to say that what's going on there is wrong or bad. He's just saying, I'm bringing you a 1,500-mile city. You have a 200-mile city. Yeah, that's cool, but boom, here's the God one. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Sylvia, go ahead real quick. Is that what you're going to tell me?
Yeah, that I agree that, because we have the earthly Jerusalem and the heavenly Jerusalem mentioned in Galatians, in that the verse that you're saying where the mountains brought low and the valleys high, that's a quote from Isaiah. And it's showing that, look, that she's punished. She's received this punishment because it's the wrath is poured out then, where you have a third of the people are wiped out, then the earthly, but then also that in Revelation 17, it seems like it's 2 times the attack. The earthly Jerusalem, where Abba's allowing it, when the New Jerusalem comes down, they want, and then when Satan is let loose for that short time, they go against the city again. But that's where he says that no weapon formed you against you shall prosper. Nobody's going to be able to harm that city.
No.
But the Revelation 17, starting at verse 14, says, these will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because He is the Lord of lords, King of kings, and those who are with Him are the called and chosen and faithful. And He said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, and the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot, and they will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and burn her up for her with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to execute His purpose by having a common purpose, and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of the Lord was fulfilled. the woman you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.
Mhm.
And they, when they decided to make Jerusalem a capital, they're saying really a capital for the world. For all the nations, this will be. So it's kind of this, you see it trying to translate it into an earthly kingdom and saying this is God's kingdom. And one translation I read, it said that the translation read something like, don't fear the plots against you. I put it in their heart to do these things that I may bring about my purpose. That's all.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you have something?
The term Holy Land, right? That does actually appear in the Bible, right? Okay. And so my thought is, I don't know that it was ever referred to as the Holy Land before people, when it was the land of Canaan and all. I don't know that it was ever referred to the Holy Land before they got set up and had the tabernacle or temple and ark and all that. And then afterwards, once it's all gone and been destroyed and removed, I don't know that it's referred to as the Holy Land then either. So to me, it was only the Holy Land when everything was set up properly and God was there.
Right.
But then before that, nope. After that, nope.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think so. We were talking about the Jerusalem thing, right? And then talking about the earthly one. So I agree with you. I do think it's more or less the earthly one, which is kind of that paradigm shift. Is probably blowing people's minds. And I'm sorry for everybody on the internet that if you could think that's weird. But I'm trying. One of the things I want to point out is in Matthew 24. I'm going to read two verses here, maybe three. And I think it's going to open up a different train of thought, hopefully. So it says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of in the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, lowercase h, by the way, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is in the housetop go, right? And we know kind of the rest of that story. Pray there's not winter or a Sabbath. Essentially, it's saying this city that he's bringing all the people against, get out. This place is going to get blown up. Like this current land thing that we understand it to be today. When you see these things happening, if you are the reader, understand this. This is written for you guys. These are the red letters, right? This is Jesus, Yeshua talking to his disciples, talking to all of us in the future. If you see this stuff happening, get out. Wherever you go, away, right? Just somewhere else. Go to the mountains, get in a boat, get away from that because there's destruction coming.
God is bringing the nations against this place.
Right, and it's going to get real bad and real ugly. And I think, when Yeshua's talking, he's not making these things up. He's not proclaiming to them new stuff they've never heard of. They would be like, oh, yeah, Zechariah was talking about that. Oh, yeah, Isaiah was talking about that. Hey, he's literally telling you, in Daniel, where I'm quoting this from, these are the things that are going to happen. So I think it is going to get real ugly for that time period in that location. And I think Kyle kind of posted a little bit there about the people rotting or that plague that hits them. One of the things that I was told, I'm talking years and years and years ago, what do we have right now? What thing do we have that has the availability of making somebody die and fully disintegrate while they're still standing?
Nuclear bomb.
A nuclear bomb. And so that goes to your point of, hey, we're going to try to defeat whatever this thing that's going on. We're going to throw all the weapons we can at it. And the people when we stand there are like, we're fighting. And they literally disappear.
You return the carbon on the wall.
Even if a nuclear bomb isn't a real thing, but I think the hydrogen bombs, even the more powerful bombs that we've come up with are real. I don't know. I don't have any.
Or even the directed energy weapons. We have a lot of stuff, right? They even have the brown note weapon. There's all these things that can mess some people up.
Yeah.
They don't have to be a nuclear bomb. The atomic bomb, the nuclear fission bomb, the
thermonuclear.
Yeah, there's all these different versions of. We're trying to split some atoms. We're trying to make some big boom out of something else, right?
Yeah.
Even if they drop a 65 bazillion pound TNT ball, something will blow you up.
Right.
TNT.
Yeah, with Kyle, what you were saying there about you said the things we consume. Nuclear, yeah, that's right. The things we consume cause this death, decaying process while we are alive and standing. And then I just want to go back to what the verse 12 says of it. It says, and this is the plague with which Jehovah plagues all the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall decay while they stand on their feet. Their eyes decay in their sockets, and their tongues decay in their mouths. Whatever it is bad. I don't think it's actually I know we're all decaying right now. We're all in the state of dying and all that stuff. But I think whatever this plague is or whatever's taking place, it very well could be some type of energy weapon that while they're standing there, it just literally just melts your body.
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause,
everything's
you know,
gone.
word for word, literal thing. Like, yeah, we're decaying now. I've been
Right.
across the point of where like I'm no longer getting better in life or whatever. I'm slowly
Right.
decaying.
Well, and even then, you know, we've seen in movies like the aliens, they have their like deatomizing weapon or whatever. You see people turn to a little pile of ash. You know, so we've even been introduced to that idea of like I don't know, Scorpion King or whatever. You know, like they the Medusa. You know, there's these concepts and ideas of people like seeing something or being hit with something that makes them go, you know, bye bye. And so you know, it may be something that we don't even yet understand, but it's definitely something going on.
Right.
You know, and like I said, that's why I think in verse 5 it says, "You shall flee to the valley of my mountain." You know, it's that verse is mirroring there with Matthew 24. You're in the city, get out. Right? He said, "Flee from this situation." You should see what's happening. Here's your warning, Matthew, because in Matthew he's giving you, I'm telling you the signs of the times, because the disciples are asking, "And Jesus, what are we going to know? How are we going to figure this out? Here's what to look for." And Zechariah saying, like, you didn't miss what to look for. It's happening. These are the events that are actually like currently happening. So by this point, you've already missed it. You should have seen the abomination of desolation. You should have seen the wars and rumors of wars. You're kind of missing. You kind of missed that.
Yeah.
So if you're still there, this is the book to help you if you're still there. I don't know how long it's going to help you. Maybe 2 minutes, but at least you're like, oh yeah, there it is, right there. Yep, he's coming down. The mountain split in half. Oh, went to the north and the south. That's interesting.
I'm screwed.
Yeah.
You know, we see those scriptures that talks about where the enemies, the traps that they set, they'll fall in themselves.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, the pits they dig, they're going to be ones to fall in it. I mean, it would just, I could kind of see that Yeshua comes down. Okay, you want to have this one thing that you can control and have a threat over everybody that can wipe all these people out. Fine. He takes his people away. This is what you wanted. You got it. And just clears the whole lot of them.
Well, again, I go back to what was the Indiana Jones movie, The Lost Ark, or something? What was it called? Yeah. And I remember watching as a kid, and in Indiana, Indigo looks at the lady with him and goes, "Close your eyes, don't look." So when they open up the Ark of the Covenant, and of course, this is not biblical at all.
Right.
But it was interesting though that whatever these spirits were that came out were flying around. If you remember, their flesh and their eyeballs are literally melting off of them, and that's why he said, "Hey, don't look at it, don't because at first they looked like pleasant looking angel looking ghostly things. All of a sudden it was like, "Rah!"
I remember.
Yeah.
Those are good.
So every time I read this, it just reminds me of that movie. That's all.
Yeah, I think in verse 11 there at the end, it says, "Jerusalem shall dwell in security." So that's the real interesting part. It's like, here's the city. I'm going to bring everybody against it. You're going to see all this crazy stuff I just talked about. But also, there's going to be some security. So it's almost, it's telling you, even though all these things are happening, I'm still in control. I still know who my setup parts are. I still know how to protect my people. I still know how to put a hedge of protection around those. You know, you might be that one house in that one building that to have a wine cellar or something, and God's like, you should go get some wine right now. Wink, wink, boom, and you're good, right? You're the people that survive. And I think what's interesting to see that because it says Jerusalem shall dwell in security, whether that's the earthly one or the heavenly one, God's in control of that.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I'm not going to just go off the rails and let the enemy blow everything up. And I'm not going to also blow everything up. I still have a plan. I still know what I'm doing. This isn't something where it's just catastrophe and I lost control.
I find it interesting because this part of our portion is about SUKKOT, even though we've talked about everything else around SUKKOT. But now, so I want to bring it back home before we leave this chapter here about the importance of the festival of SUKKOT, because a lot of times we think of it as just having a good time. And God does command us to have a good time, but there must be something, again, very important about this last feast day of the year that he says in verse 18 towards let's see where it begins. I'm sorry 16, and it says, "And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations," whoever's that's kind of, you think about it, it's a sobering thing, all who are left.
Right.
So if we do have at this point we do have a third of the world's gone. That's a lot of people, especially in our time with a third of 8 billion people.
Yeah. That's
It
crazy.
says, "And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year year to bow themselves to the sovereign Jehovah of hosts and to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. Then you see it again. The festival of SUKKOT in 18 says, and if the clan of the Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain on them. On them is the plague which Jehovah plagues the nations who do not come up to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. And then again in 19, it keeps going. It says, this is the punishment of Mitzrayim and the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT. And so we see that he's kind of driving that point home a lot with us and the significance. He didn't say about the other feast days that the men were commanded to come to Jerusalem.
Mhm.
He's saying specifically here the time of SUKKOT.
Right.
This is confusing me a bit with the Jerusalem, because it almost seems very clear it's talking about the earthly Jerusalem city now in the beginning of 14. But then it seems like it kind of makes its way to, then it starts talking about like maybe it's the new Jerusalem that's protected and things are good, and you got
Right.
the waters of, I forgot where I just read it, but like the waters will be flowing out of Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
But it never says New Jerusalem. It just keeps saying Jerusalem.
Mhm.
Well, the thing though, the what we have here is between here and Revelation though. But when his feet hit the Mount of Olives,
Mm-hmm.
it's on like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
So
It goes from this to this.
right.
Miss Sylvia?
Okay, I wanted to share, there's a section in here in Second Baruch that kind of describes that period when it happens. It says, in every nation, let me start here. Here now also regarding the bright lightning which is to come. So there was a series of this he showed him. So he's giving the breakdown of what was he was seeing. After the signs have come, of which you were told, when the nations become turbulent and the time of my Messiah is come, he shall both summon all of the nations, and some of them shall he spare, and some of them shall he slay. These things therefore shall come upon the nations which are to be spared by him. Every nation which knows not Israel and has not trodden down the seed of Jacob shall indeed be spared. So we do see some survivors on the day of the Lord. So this kind of shed a little light on that. And this, because some out of every nation shall be subjected to thy people. But all of those who have ruled over you or have known you shall be given up to the sword. And it shall come to pass when he has brought low everything that is in the world, and he has set down in peace for the age on the throne of his kingdom, the joy then shall be revealed, and rest shall appear, and then healing shall descend in dew, and disease shall withdraw, and anxiety and anguish and lamentation pass from amongst men, and gladness proceed through the whole earth. And no one shall again die untimely, nor shall any adversity suddenly befall. And judgments and revelings and contentions and revenges and blood and passions and envy and hatred and whatsoever things are like these shall go into condemnation when they are removed. For it is these very things which have filled the world with evils, and on account of these the life of man has been greatly troubled. And wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto men, and asps and dragons shall come forth from their holes and submit themselves to a little child. And women shall no longer then have pain when they bear, nor shall they suffer torment when they yield the fruit of their womb. And it shall come to pass in those days that the reaper shall not grow weary, nor those who build be toil worn. For the work shall be of themselves speedily advance, together with those who do them in much tranquility. For that time is the consummation of that which is corruptible, and the beginning of that which is not corruptible. Therefore those things which were predicted shall belong to it. Therefore it is far away from evils, and near to those which die not.
That's the 1,000-year reign time period.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is like Second Baruch. This is just like my favorite passage in here. It's just like, well, it makes you just want to exhale and all of the anxiety and the stress.
Right.
It goes away.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Yeah, whenever it gets a bit too much for me in life, I try to think to what the promises are. It's like eventually it'll be okay.
Right.
So, like,
Yeah, I think like you were saying though, Joe, I think that period of SUKKOT, it does bear a additional significance that it comes back
Mhm.
around, and it's like almost like before it was the Sabbath was the sign of being in covenant. Where here it's almost saying like, okay, now things have been reduced to a SUKKOT not playing and I wonder if it's because it's the end cap of the feast days. It's saying like essentially if you hadn't done it and you missed this, then you've missed a whole portion of feast. I do wonder if that's why it's listed singularly. Is it's assuming that you would have done everything and you had definitely better make sure you make it before the end, right? If you miss anything along the way, this one, no kidding, because now we're gonna have this whole period of darkness away from the Father. No more feast days, no more time to come into the city, no more feast days. So I always kind of wondered if there's a reason it was the last one, and then it was assuming that you would have also taken care of the first ones as well.
Mhm.
But because it only says that, I have to take it for its word. It's like this one, no kidding though.
Right.
when it comes to the feast and why maybe only Sukkot's mentioned, or it's the one that requires the most out of us. Sukkot at the end of the year, 7 days, travel. To me, that's the one that requires the most out of us. So if you're gonna pinpoint the one that requires the most out of you. Don't do the least of all of them. You go to the one that's the biggest, the best.
Right, but I also think too the reason why is because this is the reason why this is me. On top of what you guys are saying is good too, but I think the reason why SUKKOT possibly could be the one that's more, hey, you're going to do this, is because who's here with you? Who's tabernacling with you now?
That's what I was going.
So I was like, hey, I'm here to, now that God is tabernacling with men, he's like, hey, I'm here. So you're going to come before me. Let's face it, like with Passover, you can do that in your home, family thing, that personal thing. I know Shavuot, Pentecost was the other time, but I believe that now it's almost like all those feast days are now truly been fulfilled, so to speak. But now because leading up to the time that God will tabernacle with us, this is it. You've arrived. I'm here. So you need to show up so that you're going to bow before me, and hey, I want to see my kids too, and I want you to come with a grateful heart as well.
Not to mention, with SUKKOT, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't put any level of like importance or like this one's bigger, better, or stronger, whatever. But I would say that with SUKKOT, it is the end of our feast season, and it is the one where it says you bring in all of your produce, your first fruits, essentially everything, or the culmination of your year is all here. We're supposed to bring our extra tithes. We're supposed to be. That's the time we give. Like bring it and enjoy and have everything and all kind of cool stuff. And then everything else, then you give it away and help to take care of other people. This is the one that has the most impact personally and outside of you, because you said you're all of your fruits from the year, all of your everything that you didn't already bring your first fruits from your oil and your wine and everything else now is SUKKOT. So it was like, yeah, here we need some grain, here we need some oil, here we need some wine. This is everything else. This is all your fruits, your vegetables, all your everything. Where before it was just saying some wheat, some grapes and stuff. Now it's like, now we're bringing all of it. And then we're bringing so much that we're actually now sharing this with others. We're supposed to bring so much that there's leftovers, and that we don't even take that home. This ain't for you. This is for somebody else.
Right.
So I think that impact that we would have, one, is greatly increased. Plus it is a time that God is with us and what's he, telling us to go love people, right? You came to love me, now go love everybody else. So I think that when you combine all those, it does elevate it.
Yeah.
It was
For at least for singling it out.
last year's SUKKOT. It seems like more than a year ago.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's been a lot of stuff's happened.
All right, because I was thinking about it, I was like, have we done SUKKOT on the ZECHARIAH calendar before? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, last year.
We did. Yeah, it seems like a long time ago.
I know, right?
So we're gonna be feeding people physically and spiritually then during that millennial reign.
See?
Because they're gonna be down to get the bread.
Mm-hmm. The bread. So quick question for everybody, and I don't want to just turn anything else, but I was just wondering, in 14, it says, even Judah will fight at Jerusalem. And then later in 21, it says, in every pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy to the Lord. Any reason that Judah in specific, not Judea or something else, it says Judah, is there any reason like that's called out? Right? You know, there's 12 tribes, there's all kind of other stuff going on, but it's like, but Judah though, on both these occasions are called out separate or distinct.
Well, because there's prophecies even at the beginning of, like at the beginning of Second Baruch, because you've got what, roughly 100 years in between the time the 10 northern tribes were exiled until Judah was. And when we read the First and Second Esdras that they removed from the scriptures, it shows that they did not return with their whole heart. So they're kind of scattered again. So there is a small group that all believes there. But this is, let me read from this beginning of this book chapter. It says, he says, have you seen all that this people are doing to me? That the evils which these 2 tribes which remain have done are greater than those of the 10 tribes which were carried away captive. For the former tribes were forced by their kings to commit sin, but these 2 of themselves have been forcing and compelling their kings to commit sin. For this reason, behold, I bring evil upon this city and upon its inhabitants, and it shall be removed from before me for a time, and I will scatter the people among the Gentiles. And there's also that prophecy when we see Aholah and Aholabah, or the 2 sisters. He's saying the sister was worse than the first because she saw her sin.
Right.
Talking about Judah. And she saw her sin and she saw her punishment, but she turned around and she did it herself, which made it worse. So she'll drink her cup and her sister's cup. So there's this pouring out too, because it also says that Judah's blinded until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then corrected Sue. And then also that beginning of Isaiah, the very first verses in Isaiah 40, it's saying, to rejoice, rejoice. She has received her punishment.
Mm-hmm.
She has been for that time, and now he's reestablishing everything. So I think it's because of that. It's pointing out there is that double cup of wrath of not just learning what happened, but then turning and repeating the same thing and being worse. And Abba uses equal weights and measures.
First cut's always the deepest.
All right, Joey, what was the last one you had in Matthew?
No, we have Luke.
Luke chapter 2. I remember now.
Yes, 1 through 20.
Luke chapter 2, 1 through 20. Ryan, you want to read?
I'll read.
Hey guys.
No issues.
What's up, Miss Lady?
Hello. Hello. Sorry, I've had some issues going on here in my life, so I've been intermittently listening. But I just want to ask a question, make a comment type thing on the Zechariah 14. So I may have missed some of the things that y'all said, so if I'm repeating, just an idea of voting now. But thinking about SUKKOT and why it's specifically mentioned there, I'm kind of wondering if it's like a bigger picture of this is the kingdom, right? The kingdom to come, okay, this is what it's going to look like, because you have verses that say, like liars and idolaters and fornicators will the kingdom of God.
Right.
And these types of behaviors will be, like in Revelation, I think it says will be outside of the kingdom. So if the kingdom to come is that first resurrection, and 144,000, and then all of the other ones who have the white robes, who a multitude of tribes, every tongue, every nation, and all that. So all the other people that are going to be in that first resurrection, and essentially inside of the New Jerusalem, where all the other people will be outside of the nations and having to bring their things up to the New Jerusalem during SUKKOT. It kind of is almost, to me, it's like a picture of that. Does that make any sense to anybody, or anybody have any other connections that might go along with that? Sylvia?
Yeah, actually, we have been discussing that.
Okay, I missed a little hunk of it there, but, so yeah, I was wondering the same thing of why is it the other 7 or 6 not mentioned? So when y'all discussing, I was like, oh, I gotta get back on it, but I have to take care of some, so. Okay, well, if y'all already discussed it, that's just kind of what I was thinking. It's kind of like, okay, here, my people have to gather together. You have to be in the right behavior. You have to be loving one another, getting along, and you're gonna have to tabernacle together and with the Father and the Son, so.
Yeah, awesome. That was definitely a lot of the direction we were going, and we dug into some other kind of aspects of it, of like, bringing in all the harvest from the year, and that's the time that Father would be dwelling with the people, so it's more of that permanent state of not needing the sun, the moon type of stuff. So yeah, we definitely kind of got down that road quite a bit.
Okay, I'm gonna re-listen to it later, because I'm definitely curious, and I'm sorry I missed some of it, but, okay, I'm going back on mute. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, brother, you ready for Luke? I'm not your father.
1 through 20.
Yes.
Luke 2, 1 through 20.
Yes.
Do 21 if you don't mind.
Oogie doogie. And it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This census first took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered, and she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, "Let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us." And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Now when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all those who heard it marveled at those things which were told to them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Then the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, and it was told them. And when 8 days were completed for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Nice.
So this is taking the assumption that Yeshua was born during SUKKOT, which is why there was no room in the inns.
And just get rid of that. Because it's a census. That's why the towns were full, because they were all having to travel to the town where they were from for the census.
Well, I mean, all these portions were supposed to be SUKKOT related.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that's why this was spoken of, because of that assumption.
Now,
Yeah. But it's because I don't see anything that really lends to that.
Here's the deal though. I think you can go both ways in seeing that. Because I know what some of you guys, you believe that he was born in spring versus those who believe he was born in the fall.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying it's out there. It's
those are
got
some
both.
opinions, yeah.
Right. But if I was a ruler at the time, knowing that I'm going to do a census here, then when would I do a census where there'd be the most amount of people go, oh, well, the Jews have this feast day called Tabernacle. So That would be, if I was a ruler of that time, I'd say this would be a great time where all those people are already going to be sojourning. So I'm not putting an extra burden on people to show up so I can go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You know, it's like, so anyway, so it's one of those things. You're right. It doesn't necessarily, I think, saying here that it was during the time of
So I was
SUKKOT.
definitely always of the mindset that it was during a feast day. That's why they couldn't find a place to stay. But this gives you an alternative, reason for why they couldn't find a place to stay. Why was it so packed in Bethlehem?
Right.
And even then, it almost sounds to me, the way I was reading it is, why would the city be packed if it's a SUKKOT where everybody was not out of the city?
Right.
Oh, there's no room in the city,
But
everybody already left the city to
Right.
go out in the wilderness. So then it's almost like the two don't really line up. And I'm just reading what I'm seeing, right? I'm not trying to make any additional assumptions.
Right.
And I know it's been said a lot, like, hey, we celebrate Jesus' birth doing SUKKOT because of all these, different ideas and concepts. Well, again, we don't want to add anything that's not there. And then are we now taking away from something that God was like, hey, maybe it was not during any feast day. Maybe it was just middle of the summer. Maybe it was in, October 31st. And so hopefully not, right? I mean, it's Halloween, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's October 20th.
That doesn't exist on God's calendar anyway, but
Yeah.
that's man's calendar.
I know they've used the the star. I don't know what it's called, the star patterns, and they go back to when around the time of Jesus.
Stellarium.
And when that alignment would have been, and then they, Rob Skiba is famous for September 11th,
Yeah, I've
right?
seen that.
Well, I'm not saying that that's right or accurate or anything like that, but if the Zadok calendar or anything close to that is accurate, well, that's almost a whole month before SUKKOT.
Right.
Now remember, this is on the Gregorian.
Mm-hmm.
That stellarium is going to spin you back to Gregorian time, and not you. Then you would have to take the Zadok and plug it into that particular year and see exactly how that would fall in there.
Well, I mean, if it's September 11th, then September 11th now, I'm assuming that they're going off of the same calendar. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a good chance that it wasn't.
Right. It would have been prior to, which would have been closer to.
Feast of Trumpets and all that. Yeah.
And then the grand arriving.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The heralding of the king. I could actually see him being born during the Feast of Trumpets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
But just to assume it's SUKKOT and slap that on there and say never look at this again or question it, I think we might be in error there. Just to be like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
100% SUKKOT. Never ask about anything else.
even once you have so what is 8 days or whatever after the child gives birth, and then so
The child gives birth.
the mother gives birth, right?
It was tough coming out that
some
one.
people might have considered marriage to still be a child, so I might be right. Okay.
Okay.
But all the cleansing, the circumcision, her being cleansed and atoned for, whatever, with the things, and then Day of the Trumpets, then the coming blowing of the shofar, the king is here type deal. I don't know,
Yeah.
It kind of lines up.
Yeah.
Well, and
Sounds good.
And what's cool about that, actually, because something that stood out to me, that's why I wanted you to read 21. I kind of read ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
It said that
Cheated.
only today, and I only read it 2 minutes before it started, but this is at the end of the 8 days when he was circumcised, he was called Jesus. So it's almost as if, or Yeshua, right? It was almost as if the angel told her his name will be Jesus Yeshua. But they didn't really call him that because I think they wait to make sure you survive this first week. But that's that most fragile time of life that they do wait to name the child until they know it's going to survive, essentially.
Yep.
And so on the 8th day, then they called him Yeshua. It's hey, now we're acknowledging and recognizing this is the child. Because the shepherds, well, I don't know what time they got there. They probably didn't get there day one. You know what I mean? Maybe it was that same night. But it's interesting to see how there's a lot of stuff going on just in this little bit. It's so weird that this is one of the grandest events in all of human history, and it's about 17 verses.
Right.
They were out in the woods, they did some stuff, they couldn't find a place, he was born, the shepherds show up, he was circumcised. You're like, that's it? You sure there was nothing else really cool going on? But I'm just trying to keep that in context of if it was SUKKOT, that's really cool.
All right, so just looking at the calendar, I know there's Gregorian stuff and all that stuff. Okay, September 11th, right?
This year?
This year.
Okay.
September 11th this year, and then our Yom Teruah was Wednesday of last week, so that's on the 20th. That's okay. So from September 11th, you got 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th.
Wow.
8 days. That's 1 day before trumpets. He would have been circumcised.
Wow.
And clean.
Give me some of that, man. What a dig, boy.
Right? And that's why I brought that up with the trumpets. I was like, dude, they waited 8 days.
That would make sense to me because literally the king, now not the king coming with both feet splitting Mount of Olives, But the king is here.
Right.
Yeah.
And it said, so here's some more cool stuff, right? I'm thinking out loud. If he was born around Feast of Trumpets, heralded in, he left after Passover, and he says, I'm not going to do this part again.
10 days before Pesach.
Right.
I mean, before Pentecost.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah.
So he's leaving during the spring feast. He says he will return back in the same form and fashion, and we're expecting him to return when? Around Feast of Trumpets is when people have suggested.
Right.
So he's named Yeshua king. He's coming back on the same day, same time, and it says as he ascended, also will he descend. So I wonder if there's really some even more connections in there of like, okay, when he came into the world, same way that he's going to come back to the world in the same season, same time frame. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be really
I mean,
cool.
now we're just going, again, more assumptions, but
Wow, what a good find there, Brian. You get an extra scoop of mashed potatoes a day.
That's it. You
so
get,
smart like Ryan.
you get a possible A, but you could be completely wrong. So
No.
we'll just hold that up.
It's an A or an F. Either way.
Yeah, somebody listening comes up. Well, actually, it was.
Right.
Man.
Your calendars are stupid.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No.
That verse in Daniel where it said for time, times, and half time. That word times used in there is the word moed. So it's also 3.5 feast seasons.
Mm.
I mean,
There
that
you
one
go.
makes it comes back halfway. I mean, I know one of the things in Jeremiah, or it says he will bring us into Passover.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he returns. And he said he won't eat it again until he's in the kingdom with us. But if it comes back to Shavuot, and now, or just prior to Shavuot, to pick up right where he left off, that's the inauguration of the new covenant.
And that would be half a feast season as well.
Right, and he takes this harvest, and then now it's established, and then those survivors of the day of the Lord. Now Passover is going to kick on because we have all of these mortals that still, need to learn all of these things. So then that we're picking up, and that he brings us into that Passover at that point. So that half a moed makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. What you got, Mr. Kyle?
Just a thought, maybe I want to see if you guys have anything on this. So the whole concept of the name not being established until the 8th day. With the circumcision on the 8th day, is that also not the confirming of a covenant?
Correct.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of rabbit holes we can explore on that.
Oh, yeah. My brain's already been cooking in grease over here.
Holy grease.
Holy grease.
When you confirm a covenant for 1 week, isn't it, does that week have to be complete to be confirmed?
If you confirm a covenant for a week, does that week have to be completed?
I don't get any credit.
For the confirmation?
Oh, yeah, I guess for it to be confirmed, yeah. You'd have to complete it, you have to finish it out.
There you go.
It would be incomplete otherwise.
So there's all kind of covenant language and prophetic language up in this one thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what Ian had brought up earlier, when you read past 21, it goes into how they kept the whole thing with the 2 pigeons or the 2 turtle doves.
Right.
According to in 24 it says, or actually let's go to 23. It says it has been written in the Torah of Jehovah, every male who opens the womb shall be called set apart to Jehovah, and to give an offering according to what it says in the Torah of Jehovah, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now, it doesn't mention the sheep here or whatever, but I'm assuming marrying them we're not rich enough to be affording, something like that, a lamb.
Yeah, and the other verse, I know some of you guys online may not be privy to this one, but one of our Telegram groups, we were bringing up some different verses, and the verse that came up this week was Luke 2:14, and in my version here it says, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom He is well pleased." We dug into the Hebrew of that word, well pleased, or with whom He's well pleased, because other versions say something different, and not the Hebrew, the Greek, excuse me. And it was very interesting. We're talking about a lot of, how do we have peace amongst the brothers and sisters? How do we, fulfill this desire for unity? Obviously, it's to be unified under the truth of Messiah, right? The thing that He's going to teach us all whenever we're in the New Jerusalem. We will no longer need to learn the Torah, because it'll be in our hearts and in our minds. So then that will be the unity that we're actually searching for and waiting for. But here it's telling us ultimately glory to God. We're giving God all the glory, and on earth there's going to be peace amongst the men. But what's going to be the cause of that, or result of that? It's going to be with whom He's pleased. So what do we do, and who are we? Putting ourselves in that position of being pleasing to the Father, right? And, it talks about His sacrifices and things, and it says it was a pleasing aroma, meaning it was done correctly and it was done according to His instructions. So then how do we become pleasing to the Father? We do things correctly according to His instructions. And I thought that was very interesting, that the glory went to the Father. The peace we're going to receive is in the unity under that same Torah that we'll all receive. And then we're pleasing because we're doing it according to His desire and instructions. So that verse 14 for me, stood out a ton, and I dug that one this last week. Not even knowing that we read that today. Well, it's almost closing time. Any last words? Any other comments, ideas? Anything from Luke 2? Or connections from the previous chapters?
If not, go ahead and close out prayer, brother.
All right, so everybody, let's go ahead and pray. Lord, I thank You for the day You've given us. I appreciate so much that we get to come together in this mostly free country where we can open Your words and read Your scriptures and really just talk through them and dig into some stuff, open our minds to ideas and concepts that maybe we hadn't heard before, hadn't thought of before, stretching ourselves and knowing that we've never reached the depth of You, and we will continue to search and try, and it'll never happen. And that's a blessing, because You are so magnificent and so awesome that even our human brains and human mentality can never even get to that point. So it's just a constant search, a constant relationship where no matter what, as long as we're gathering and reading Your word, there's going to be something good, something new, and something positive. So I just pray that we take these words, that we find ways to apply them to our lives, that we go and dig into some of these questions that were brought up today and some of these ideas and concepts, that we truly want to honor You. We want to be pleasing to You, that we give You the glory, and that You can call us ones that You're pleased with. So I thank You for Your Son, Yeshua, and all the things that we are able to do in our lives today. Praise in Your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen. Shabbat shalom to everybody online. Thank you for joining us via Zoom, via Facebook, and everywhere else on YouTube. And happy SUKKOTing to everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.